Good afternoon, everyone. The City of London is situated on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Lenapewick, and we honor and respect the history, languages, and cultures of the diverse Indigenous people who call this territory home. The City of London is currently home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit today. As representatives of the people of the City of London, we are grateful to have the opportunity to work and live in this territory. I'll look to call the 11th meeting of the Civic Works Committee to start. First, I want to mention that the City of London is committed to making every effort to provide alternate formats and communication supports for meetings upon request. To make a request specific to this meeting, please contact cwc@london.ca or 519-661-2489, extension 2425. Please also check the city's website for additional meeting details, information. Meetings can be viewed via live stream on YouTube and the city's website. I'll go to item number 1, disclosures of pecuniary interest. I see none, and I see Councillor Van Meerbergen joining us online. Hello, nice to see you. And we have all other members of committee in chambers. Just looking to see if we have any other visiting councillors online. I don't see any, but I do see Councillor Pribble here as well. Thanks for joining us. We're going to move on to item number 2, our items for consent. I've been asked to pull item 2.7. Are there other items that councillors would like pulled? Councillor Chaussa?
I don't want to pull any other items, but I do have some questions about 2.3 and 2.6. And I don't feel I need to pull those, though.
Okay, thank you. I will look to put items 2.1 to 2.11 on the floor, excluding 2.7, looking for a mover and seconder to do that, and then we'll start our discussion. Councillor Cuddy and Councillor McAllister. Oh, you're a little bit slower, Councillor Van Meerbergen this time around, but we have a mover and a seconder. Thank you. Any questions for staff on any of those items for consent? Councillor Chaussa, go ahead.
On 2.3, I simply wanted to ask about the possible future status and the feasibility of the pet waste inclusion. Would that involve using a different kind of liner? Is that something that we could look forward to in the future if we have different types of liners, or is that, yeah, could you comment on that?
Thank you to, just before you, Councillor Chaussa, if you don't mind, can you just tip your mic down too for when you're speaking? Thank you so much. Were you able to hear all that, Mr. Stanford? And okay, I'll over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, and through the chair, the addition of pet waste, the way our report has been positioned, it could be added really at any time that committee and council wish to do that. Your report today before you has recommended what we refer to as material mix number 1, which does not include pet waste, as a good place for London's green bin program to start. But the way it has been set up, where the liner system that'll be permitted, either a paper bag, paper materials, or certified compostable bags, those are available in the marketplace right now and are also available in the marketplace for pet waste. So should committee and council wish to add it at a future point, we have pricing for that, and that will be part of the contract record and something that could be implemented at council's desire.
Thank you, and also through the chair, I appreciate that. And I just want to avoid confusion on the part of residents as to where they should be putting these bags, because some people are going to think it should go in one, some people should think it should go in the other, and I think we just we've got a big constituency of people who will be doing this, and they want to do the right thing, but I think we'll have to really focus our education efforts on that.
Thank you for that, Councillor. And I wanted to say welcome to Acting Mayor Lewis, who's joined us in chambers as well. Thank you, Mr. Stanford, for the information that's provided in the package today. Was there anything else that you wanted to add, perhaps, before I know Councillor Purple has some additional questions as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think probably the only thing to add at this point is we're still getting asked what does the rollout look like? When will the green bin program start? That'll all be subject of a report coming to the next CWC in August. We are currently working with a timeline of late fall, early winter. That will be narrowed down in the next 30 days. We've been in discussion with our truck manufacturer, and we're starting to receive some positive news on when the remaining vehicles will be available for a rollout here in London. Our report right now has that time frame in mind. We will narrow that down, as well as some of the questions that still remain out there, such as what will happen with the container limit. Currently, right now, it's at 3 containers of garbage per pickup. How will that change? We'll be coming forward in our August report with details on that, as well as any other information dealing with the green bin itself. It'll take about 2 months, for example, for that container to be distributed to all London households that are receiving the service, curbside primarily, as well as details on the multi-residential pilot project. So we have to wait just a little bit longer for those to be finalized. But if there are any questions on that right now, I'll do my best today to answer anything in that regard.
Thank you. I will go to Councillor Cuddy and then to Councillor Purple.
Thank you. And through your chair, I just want to thank Mr. Stanford and his staff for the work that you've done on this. This is a big issue during the election campaign. My constituents in Ward 3 were anxious to have something like this happen. You've made it happen, and we really appreciate the hard work and effort. I know it hasn't been easy, and we're looking forward to the rollout. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Purple, and then I have some questions as well.
Thank you, Chair, and through the Chair to the staff. Every agreement that I see, legal agreement that we are obliged to deliver certain minimums always kind of worries me. And, during the 15,000 tons, and then it goes higher and higher. How confident are we can deliver this? Because again, it's a totally new territory for us. And if we don't, what are the penalties, or are we aware of those?
Thank you to staff.
Through the chair, the notion of minimum quantities became a requirement of the request for proposals. The bidders put forward a number of questions and indicated that if capacity is to be tied up for the City of London, they needed to know how much. In year 1, which is probably our most challenging year because it's the startup of the program, we've had conversation with our proposed contractor here, and there will be some flexibility on that minimum tonnage. There has to be further discussion on that. But as we move into the future, these are tons that are very important that Londoners do their best to comply with. We'll be making sure that information is available to them. So we are reasonably comfortable that this can be delivered. It is based on experience in many jurisdictions across Ontario. We've not set high minimum standards. We've set what we believe are quite reasonable. So I'm confident that Londoners with their appetite for the green bin program will be able to hit these targets, perhaps even in year number 1. We'll be bringing forward further information in our next report on how some of that's going to work as part of the rollout strategy. But right now, I'm quite comfortable that Londoners can meet the requirement.
Follow-up, Councillor?
Yeah, thank you for the response, and I do hope that we deliver it as well, but if we don't, on both sides, so the corporation is protected, and as well as we know, there was only one organization that bid on this RFP, so it's fair on both sides. So I just hope that just in case we don't deliver the 15,000 and the future years, that both sides, us and the organizations, are protected, and there's a certain expectations if we didn't deliver what happens, so we are not in a gray area. That's the only other comment. I don't know if you would like to comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you. If the committee will indulge me, I do have some, sorry, go ahead, Mr. Stanford.
Sorry, Madam Chair, that continuation of the question is very important to understand. Minimum quantities are the requirement of what has to be delivered. So should the City of London and the residents not deliver that quantity, you would still have to pay for those tons. So that is why the monitoring of this program, the education and awareness, reporting out constantly is very, very key to make sure that we're using this in part as leverage. Because why would we want to pay for something that we're not using? So all Londoners need to understand it's incumbent upon all of us to make sure that we hit these targets. That's why we picked minimums that we believe are quite reasonable to achieve. But it does require work, and it requires consistency in product quality and feedstock quality. All things, though, that other communities have managed to deliver on. Therefore, we're building off a very good foundation, not only here in London, but across other communities' experiences.
Okay, just the last follow-up, so thank you for the answer. But again, so the supplier, they would be understandable if we don't deliver 15,000, but they would still charge us for it.
To staff, go ahead.
Through the chair, that is how the contract is currently struck. In year one of the contract, we are looking at some flexibility, and some of those discussions are ongoing now and will be concluded over the next little bit on what that might look like.
Thank you, no more questions. Thank you.
Please bear with us just for a moment as we make sure that our live stream is working. Okay, thanks everyone for taking a moment there. We're going to continue on. We are still working through getting the live stream working, but we are recording, so we're able to put this up later if needed. Okay, back to questions about 2.3. So I did have a question. First, Councillor Pribble, are you satisfied? All your questions are answered? Okay, thank you. I did have a question, if the committee will allow it, at the chair. My question is regarding odor mitigation. So I did read in the report that in 2021, some upgrades did happen at Convertus for odor mitigation. If you can just speak to that issue, as I know it previously has been a concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. During our tour of the facility, as well as referenced in the proposal submitted by Convertus, they talked about a number of the upgrades that occurred at the facility. The facility has been in London for many years and actually has been under different ownership. In fact, I believe this is now the third owner. Some recent investment in 2021 was required to also, it was a bit of an aging facility, but in conversation with the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, they had to do some upgrades to make sure that they were making sure that their odor abatement system was meeting the requirements of their environmental compliance approval. So we had an opportunity to discuss that with Convertus. We had an opportunity to discuss that with actually the ministry as well too. And the work that has been undertaken in the last couple of years has really made a difference at that particular facility. And the level of concern has dropped dramatically. So that was all been part of sort of our due diligence, and we are quite comfortable in recommending them today as a facility in compliance and prepared to enter into any type of discussions with the community at any time using a variety of methods, and have been doing that, and we will continue and encourage that type of collaboration with the local community.
Thank you. My second question relates similar to Councillor Trosso around pet waste. I just wanted to ask, I noticed it's about 50-50 in terms of current cities, municipalities that are doing pet waste and those that are not. I'm just wondering from your perspective what you see as the benefit and drawbacks of pet waste. I know that you mentioned that there's concern over, and Councillor Trosso mentioned this as well, as adapting to whatever we decide to do, whether it's adding it later on or not doing it at all. But I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on achieving our targets, our greenhouse gas emission targets, our potential gains from having additional tons added, and at this net price as well. I think there's lots of benefits to considering adding pet waste, and just wanted to get your thoughts. Thank you.
Madam Chair, as we chatted with other communities, and as you see in the report, it does refer to several communities that have pet waste in their system, and then some that have added it in recent years. The kind of consistent information we received back was start wisely, and through sort of a series of steps, get the basic materials right first. And in that case, you know, food waste is the target material. And some of the soiled papers, and a few other items listed in the report. We also, though, because pet waste is, believe it or not, a large portion of the waste stream, running at about 10% by weight, we recognize the importance of having solutions for that. And so when we went out in the request for proposals, we asked for price on what would it take to add that material into the mix. And we have that price, and it's presented in the report today. So once again, it's the ability or the desire of council on how quickly it wishes to move forward. Here's the dilemma that we're still sorting through as staff. As we move to bi-weekly garbage collection, with pet waste being kept out of this green bin, it would require homeowners to hang on to that material for the 2-week period. So there will be some change. Other communities have managed to move through that particular change and have been successful. Others have prompted a change in the collection system. The benefit is what has been provided to you today is that the ability to move to that additional material is once again within committee and council's purview to do it basically at any time. So we are quite comfortable in proceeding in the direction that we have presented in the report, but should there be a change, the system that we're proposing here can easily accommodate that additional material. So it's one of those where we're comfortable in the current direction, but can make that change at any point in time.
Thank you. And just to follow up to that, do you know any of the cities referenced here that started out with pet waste right at the beginning when they started with green bins? I'm just wondering, perhaps there's some key learnings that can happen from those that did it right at the beginning versus those that added that later on. My concern, I guess, is that we're trying to set in place a new behavior, and to me, it seems to make sense to try to have all those behaviors and that conversation with the community about how to do green bins right all at once and at the beginning. So if we're going to add another stream later on, if that's the will of council later on, then to me, it kind of makes sense to do it right from the onset, and that way we are all clear on everything that can go in all at once. But I would really appreciate your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You're referring to Table 3 on page 17, where it identifies about 6 or 7 communities that we've been in conversation with. I believe about half of them added it right from the start. For example, City of Toronto, the region of York, 2 very large facilities or municipalities. When they got their program started, one of the initial challenges was that pet waste brought in plastic bags and not the certified compostable type of plastic bags, because plastic bags were actually very, very common in the marketplace. Just about all your retail outlets were using them on a regular basis. In the last year, there's been quite a substantial change in how the marketplace is responding to the regulation at the federal government level where plastic bags are now being phased out. And in fact, this is the year that we're still seeing them at retail stores, but they will all be phased out over the course of this year. Basically, stores are running through the existing supplies, and they'll no longer be able to purchase plastic bags for retail use. As a result, the increase in the use of certified compostable bags is something that's growing, and it's growing in the pet waste market as well. So this is one of those items where a behavior at the start with the materials that we're recommending, food waste and soiled paper, and cooking in oil and grease and those items, the addition of pet waste would not be a problem as long as it is following the same format, no plastic bags. So if that is something that committee and council wish to start right away, we are set up to do that. Or it could be referred to as an item that will be considered, and within 6 months after successful implementation of the existing materials, it could be added. There are a couple ways to position that. And if it's an item that you wish more information on, we could easily include that in our August report on how that could work. If that is something that comes forward from committee and council today, we would get more details on that. Fortunately, what we have in our way, just to repeat, in the response from the Convertus, we have that opportunity. So that is an easy change to make.
Thank you, and I appreciate the conversation. And just a final comment, I noted in 3.0 on page 21, the unspent amount and the report that will be coming forward in September. Just a comment, I'm hoping that that will be used towards the implementation of green bins, whether it's we look at helping with some of the disposable bags to, again, help set that behavior in place, or something to help encourage this program, or other things related to our climate action plan. Okay, with that, I want to see if there are additional questions on the consent items, including, and that was everything except for 2.7. Okay, we'll go to Councillor Van Meerbergen, then to Acting Mayor Lewis.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify in regard to 2.3, the green bin program. Just clarify the situation with steaming baby diapers. What is the situation? Are they allowed to be used in the green bin program? And if not, are they expected to fester for 2 weeks?
Thank you. Mr. Stanford, go ahead.
Thank you, and through the chair, diapers and other sanitary products will not be permitted in the green bin. That was a decided matter of council quite some time ago, so to be clear on that one. As it stands right now, yes, they would be collected on the every 2-week basis, and we will have more information on that in our August report. There are a number of municipalities that do make different types of exceptions on how diapers can be handled. So we will lay out some of those options in our August report for committee and council to determine whether there are any additional solutions they wish offered for homes that have diapers that perhaps cannot be handled for a 2-week period.
Thank you. Follow-up, Councillor?
Well, no, I appreciate the answer. I just know that's going to be quite a big issue for a lot of families to hold on to diapers for 2 weeks. So appreciate the answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Any final questions on 2.3 before we move on to other items on consent? Okay, seeing none, I'll go to Acting Mayor Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And through you, my question is not about dog waste or cat waste or baby human waste. It is actually about 2.9. And it's not, well, one small question in there. Very happy to see the RFP recommendation coming forward on the master plan for Dundas Streetscape in the Argyle business area as part of our CIP. The BIA is chomping at the bit, and so I'm just wondering, with the approval of this, do we have a ballpark timeline for community engagement where the businesses in particular can start to provide some feedback on some of their priorities into the streetscape? I have a file folder full of some ideas to share already, and I know that other businesses are looking to provide their input too. So I'm just wondering if we can get a little update on what the public engagement process will look like moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Dales.
Thank you, through the chair. So subject to council approval of the consultant award, we will work closely with the consultant to develop a schedule, including consultation. That certainly will be an important component of the overall study, and we look forward to proceeding with that work in the short term.
Thank you, follow-up. Very good. Okay, thank you. Any other questions regarding any of the consent items excluding 2.7? Councillor Tressa.
I just want to indicate that I had several questions, but they were answered by staff before this meeting.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, with that, we have a mover and seconder for our consent items, which again is everything from 2.1 to 2.11, excluding 2.7. So I will open. Thank you, and we will get that loaded into eScribe for you. Councillor Van Meerbergen?
Closing the vote, the motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. And just to clarify for everyone that because Acting Mayor Lewis is here, it makes it 6 votes, not just 5. So thanks. For continuity, would members of the committee would like to deal with 2.7 now and then come back to our item for direction? Counselor Chasa?
No, specifically no, because I think that the conversation that we're going to have about the mobility master plan will help inform our discussion on this item.
Thank you. Okay. Then we'll move along to items under item number 4.1, as we have no scheduled items. And we have, for 4.1, we had the 8th report of the Environmental Stewardship and Action Community Advisory Committee. So upon further discussion with the chair of that committee, and realizing that this is going to be a lengthier conversation, I'd like to move a referral to a future meeting for this item. He was to appear as a delegation, and he is going to do his delegation at a future meeting. And that way we're also prepared to have our Mr. Katolik here, as well as other staff that might be able to help address some questions related to that item. So I'm looking for support. I will move that referral. Looking for a seconder. Okay, Councillor Trosso. Any discussion on that item, 4.1? Okay, I've got Councillor Van Meerbergen, and then Acting Mayor Lewis. Councillor Van Meerbergen, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm wondering at this point, I'd certainly like a little bit more fulsome background on this, and I'd like to request that we go in camera for legal advice.
Madam Chair, I don't know if there's anybody from legal on the call. I would check in with clerks. There is? Okay, wonderful.
I believe Grace Smith is.
Okay. Counselor, I'm just wondering, because the chair who requested this item isn't here, I'm just wondering, and again, that was based on a conversation that I had with the chair about making this potentially an opportunity for a bigger discussion at a future meeting. So I'm just wondering if you might consider having this at our next meeting.
I would prefer that we go in camera currently. I just have one or two questions.
Okay, thank you. So you're looking to move a motion to go on camera?
Yes, please.
Okay, Councillor Cuddy has seconded that motion. Okay, so we. Okay, so we will vote on the in-camera portion and then come back to the referral. Councillor Trosso.
Yes, I would like to speak against sending this to that in-camera meeting right now. The very idea that we need more information is exactly why this is being deferred. We need to have the people who have been working on this, and we have a very, very busy agenda today, and I just see no reason going into camera today and then having to redo the whole thing later. There is no prejudice that is going to result to anybody. No action is being taken. Nothing is going to be moved. So I think that would be a very poor use of our time, and I would urge my colleagues to vote against that request.
Thank you. Other speakers on the motion to go on camera? Okay, seeing none, we will open that up for vote. Sorry, Councillor Van Meerbergen, go ahead.
Well, I just want to counter what was just stated. I think it's very important we go on camera, and it's very germane to what we're looking at here. So I would urge our colleagues to vote in favor of getting a little bit more information from legal. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll open that up for a vote if there's no further discussion.
Motion fails 3-3.
Okay, so now we are going to deal with referral, which was moved and seconded. Anyone that would like to speak to the referral? Okay, Acting Mayor Lewis, go ahead.
So I'm happy to support the referral. I think, however, as we've clearly heard, that the next committee agenda that this lands on, we need to make sure that in addition to Mr. Katolik, legal is available to answer questions. And I think that's relevant specifically because the report from the advisory committee opinions some legal concerns. But respectfully, we don't take legal advice from an advisory committee. We take it from our city solicitor's office. So I just want to highlight that I think it is relevant to have legal available when this item returns.
Thank you. Any other comments? Acting Mayor Lewis, would you move the motion for me? Thanks. Okay, and now that's open for voting.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 6-0.
Okay, thank you. So we'll look to have that conversation about the 8th report of the Environmental Stewardship and Action Community Advisory Committee, as well as the added delegation at a future meeting. So we'll move on to item 4.2, which is the London Transit 2022 Annual Report. That's in your package. As you'll note, we have Ms. Fleshny here as well. Thank you for being here today. I'm not sure if you wanted to provide any preliminary comment on the report. Thank you. Over to you.
I can do a quick intro. Through the chair, the 2022 annual report, consistent with the previous 2 years, reports on progress against the initiatives set out in the Commission's current business plan and the performance and target metrics that are traditionally utilized, notwithstanding the operating conditions over the pandemic period were significantly different than what we would traditionally experience. As the report sets out, the overall ratings for performance against the strategic objectives range between satisfactory and good, noting performance was measured against the business plan targets, but also gave consideration to operating during the pandemic period. One of the important things that we've highlighted in our last few annual reports is the recognition by all levels of government during the pandemic period of the value that a viable public transit service provides to the community, and that resulted in funding from both the provincial and federal governments with respect to operating on the federal side. That's something we've never seen before. So that was a significant move, from that level of government, recognizing that it was imperative that transit continued to operate through the pandemic period so that members of the community had access to the community. I believe the rest of the report speaks for itself, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. So this item is in front of us today to be received. I'll look for a mover and a seconder, and then we can have further conversation. Councillor Cuddy and Councillor McAllister, thank you. And would anyone like to get started with some debate, conversation? Councillor Shasta, go ahead.
Through the chair, may I ask if you could respond to the items that was raised by the added delegation statement from the added item from Mr. Preston?
Thank you, Ms. Fleshny. Do you need more detail than that, or
I have a copy of
okay,
the added. So I'm assuming you're referring to the 3 bullets in the document.
Thank you, Councillor. Is that what you're referring to?
I'm referring to the entire document, but the 3 bullets are just
Thank you, Madam Chair. So through the chair, with respect to the first bullet, asking how a fully compliant report was submitted to the Ontario government, at the time of submitting those compliance reports, which is every 2 years is required under the Act, we submit based on what we know at the time and you know, the status that we're currently at. I can say I wouldn't knowingly submit a report that says we're compliant when I didn't believe that we were. So that's my response to that. In terms of resolving the instances of non-compliance identified in the letter, we did provide an update to the Commission at the previous meeting on that. A number of the sections identified in that letter have just recently been audited by the Accessibility Directorate, to which we received no issues of non-compliance or any orders to change anything. A number of the other issues we have looked into, and we will be providing a report back to the Commission at our next meeting. And in terms of accessibility being added as a key strategic priority, we can certainly take that under advisement. The Commission is just now in the process of creating the next multi-year business plan and the associated performance metrics that will go with that, as well as the service plans that will talk about the rate of growth for transit services going forward.
Thank you. Did you have follow-up questions? Go ahead, Councillor.
Yes, do you think that this council has said enough already on the question of the importance of accessibility as an equity issue in transit, both in terms of previous communications we've sent to you and most notably in our strategic plan, that you don't really have to take that under advisement anymore, but it should be acted on as an actionable item right now?
Through you, Madam Chair, well, accessibility isn't a separate strategic outcome in our current business plan. The Commission does have an accessibility plan that outlines specific accessibility initiatives, and accessibility is inherent in the business plan. I was referring to the specific recommendation that talked about adding it as a key strategic priority. So I'm not saying that accessibility isn't something that we strive to achieve. What I'm saying is it's not currently a separate objective.
Thank you. Follow-up, Councillor?
Yes, also through the chair, putting aside the 3 bullets and the Mr. Preston also says that he was disheartened to read the largely self-congratulatory report submitted for review despite ongoing issues. Within the report, and I'll quote, "The Commission self-assesses a satisfactory level of service despite the countless reports of missed rides and long redial times to book rides on paratransit." And I'll stop that there. Now, you received a previous communication from this council regarding deficiencies in the paratransit program. This was informed by a resolution drafted by this committee, which was largely based on Dr. Preston's earlier representation to this committee. I for myself have a very difficult time assessing this as satisfactory, because I don't think it is satisfactory, and I would like you to comment on that.
As I said earlier, the assessments are against the strategic objectives within the business plan, giving consideration of the pandemic-related impacts. I think we've been very transparent throughout the pandemic with respect to the issues that we're facing both on conventional and specialized with respect to vehicle availability and staff resources. We've been doing everything we can on both of those services to get them ramped up to where we would like them to be able to meet the demands of the community. That's something that continues to be a challenge. So we've never argued that we're behind. We acknowledge it in several instances within the annual report that we aren't where we wanted to be. We certainly weren't in 2022. We're not there today. But we are doing everything we can to get there. And we are unfortunately still facing some resource challenges. The biggest one on the specialized side is the delivery of vehicles. The vehicles that were delivered over a year ago, or that were ordered over a year ago, still haven't been delivered. So we're struggling. We're working with the provider to consider a different type of vehicle. We're considering all options on the table to get that service ramped up as quickly as possible. So we are certainly working at it, and we have been very transparent in the fact that service is not where we would like it to be. But like I said, we are doing everything that we can.
I'll yield
Counselor
to other
Caldwell?
counselors for now.
Thank you. Councilor McAllister.
Thank you, and through the chair. To Councilor Trusso's point, I think the issue, and I had similar misgivings when I read the report, and what you've identified, to me, that leads more to needs improvement. Like, it seems like it's at the bottom tier for all the reasons you've just outlined. But what I'm struggling with is it needs to be a key priority because of all the failings that we've seen. And it's come to us a number of times. I don't think anyone in the public hasn't heard about the issues with paratransit at this point. And so I think it's hard in this report to see this and not have it identified as a major failing. And I would have it as needs improvement. I understand the challenges, but it needs to be called out for its failings. And I think we have to acknowledge that as a committee, that it should be a top priority. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Pribble.
I just want to mention, as one of the commissioners on LTC, I just want to state a couple of things. First of all, both the management, staff, and the commissioners, we do realize that there's certainly a room for improvement, no doubt about that. On the other hand, currently we are going, there's a certain review that was asked for, so the review hasn't been completed yet. That's one thing. And second thing is, we did get a request, certain goals, tasks to achieve by September, by January, and 4-year goal. So I just want to let you know that currently all are in process. So it's not that there were certain issues that were raised in February, March with deadlines 30, 60, 90 days or anything like that haven't been completed. That's not the case whatsoever. So the first ones are in September. Everything is, things haven't been accomplished yet, but certainly the deadlines haven't been missed yet. So I just want to reiterate that the two previous councillors, they are saying that that there's no urgency. We do see that there's a tremendous room of improvement. We are working on it, and I hope we are going to deliver all the things that were requested by this group. And when we talked about a strategic plan and actually increase ride capacity, the LTC will be putting it in the strategic plan, in the budget, and this will be presented to to the council with their budget requests. So I would say right now, currently, I just don't want to state that we don't see that there is lots of room, there is room for improvement, and we are working on it. So I just want to assure that both the council as well as the other ones, the work has been, it's a work in progress, and we are working on it, and we should be meeting all the deadlines. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go to Acting Mayor Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So when we look at the key elements in the grades and the ongoing development of a safe, integrated, accessible public transit service, ensuring the service meets the needs of a growing, competitive, and changing market, I will echo Councillor McAllister's comments. I think the grade on this should be needs improvement. I don't think it is satisfactory today. Through you, Madam Chair, I would like to ask our delegate, and this is a particular item, and so I'd like the opportunity to, if she's able to provide an update on this particular item for accessibility in particular. When do we expect to move away from phone-only booking and give specialized transit riders the opportunity to book rides online? This has been a long-standing ask. I know the Commission has heard it. I know that work has been taking place to get there. When is our anticipated date where we can tell riders you can now book online?
Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. So again, this has been the topic of much discussion at the Commission, and understandably, this has been a long-standing request. Unfortunately, the booking software that we use for the specialized service changed ownership twice during the pandemic period, and it is currently owned by the owner of the software has a competing product. So what they've notified us of is they're not making any more improvements to the product that we have. They will continue to support it, but they won't make improvements. One of those improvements that we've been long waiting for is the ability to do booking online. What that means is we've got to go out to RFP for an alternative booking system. That is in progress. We are in the works right now. We're closely watching essentially York Region, Thunder Bay, another system up north, and us are all with that product, and we're all collectively looking at the best path to move forward and move forward quickly because we're all kind of in the same situation. So I can't tell you a date. I can say that the RFP process is in progress and we're moving as quickly as we can. We understand that it's an issue and it's something that we want to move on as quickly as possible.
Follow-up, Council? Acting Mayor?
In the interim, with an RFP in process, if the current vendor has a competing piece of software that does allow for online booking, is there not an opportunity to fill that gap in the interim by upgrading to their alternate product while we wait for the results of an RFP? Most vendors are willing to upsell you to their next best thing in many cases. Now, I am not familiar with the particular software you're using, so maybe that is not an option, but it would seem to me that discussions around simply upgrading to their other product in the interim while an RFP is in process would be an option to getting paratransit riders the opportunity to book online sooner. Is that an option that's been investigated?
Ms. Pachi?
Through the chair, that has not been investigated primarily because when we implemented the system that we've got right now, it was about $1 million project. For us to switch to what the vendor currently is offering would be another $1 million project, and it would essentially be a sole source award. So it's not giving us the opportunity to look to see what's out there in the market and make sure we're selecting the right one. There is no, you can try this for 6 months for a reduced fee while you look for other things. It would be a sole source award to that vendor versus going out and doing a public tender.
Follow-up?
And further to that, if there's an RFP process in place, does LTC anticipate a cost impact in terms of having to terminate the existing license when a new RFP is awarded for an online app, or will you be continuing to use the software for the dial-in booking and then running a second piece of software in parallel?
Through the chair, the entire system is being replaced, but there would be no, we pay an annual maintenance fee for the licensing, so we don't anticipate that there would be any repercussions from that.
Okay, I appreciate hearing that. So I do think at this point, I want to put forward one motion. And I will agree with Councillor Trussow. I think the message has been made loud and clear from council. But I think to put it in very clear black and white to send back to the commission, I do think that it would be appropriate, and I'll move that. I'm going to try and keep this language as simple as possible, and I'll rely it because I'm doing it on the fly, but I'll rely on the clerk's assistance on this, that the London Transit Commission be requested to include accessibility as a key component in the development of their next strategic plan. And I don't know if I have a seconder for that, or if colleagues might have some alternate or some language tweaks they may want to see, but I think that it's important that we do request that specifically of the commission.
Thank you. I saw Councillor Cuddy's hand up to second that. Did you want to speak to it at all? Councillor? Okay.
No, thank you, Chair. I'm fine.
We'll ask the clerk to read out the motion.
That the London Transit Commission be requested to include accessibility as a key component in their next strategic plan.
Thank you. Councillor Trossa, you want to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I appreciate all of the comments that the deputy mayor made through the chair. I would take this a little further. I would be inclined to support the motion because I think what he suggested is right. I also note that on the agenda today, and I hate to take this out of order, but we do have an added communication from Mayor Morgan on the mobility master plan that I think speaks directly to the item that's on the floor right now. So I'd hate to dispose of this and then come back later and go through the whole thing again, especially since staff is here. And I'm wondering if there's a way to integrate these comments into the deputy mayor, the acting mayor's motion. Furthermore, I'm not prepared to accept this report because I think the report is substantially deficient, and I want to send it back and have it fixed. And I think that you've been given adequate information today to do that. I don't think that rejecting asking for this report to be tweaked and resubmitted is contrary to what the acting mayor has suggested or what Mayor Morgan has suggested, but I would really like to come out of this discussion right now with a clear package, because I really think that this commission needs to get a very clear message from this council that the way things are going is not acceptable, and we want to see some changes, not in the next period, but as soon as possible, yesterday. So I'm looking for some guidance. Perhaps other councilors may have a suggestion, or the clerk would have a suggestion. But I think we've got a couple of different things that are in the mix now.
Okay, thank you. So just to comment on that, the report is in front of us is to be received. So that's what we're being asked to do. It is a 2022 report as well, and what we're talking about really is the conversation that has been had. I will say that those in the accessibility community have been having this for 10 years, but we as a council have only been having it for our term so far. So I understand where you're coming from. I hear the frustration. I appreciate all the questioning that's happened today, and the clarification provided by Ms. Poleshny, and the continued willingness and openness and transparency. I have to say, you continue to come to Civic Works and really answer a lot of grilling, sometimes I hope you don't feel that way, questions of our committee. But we have a motion on the floor right now. I will say that I had similar concerns, so perhaps Acting Mayor Lewis can address those around the mayor's motion as well that's coming through the MMP process. So perhaps you might want to comment on how those two things line up and whether or not this may be a bit of a repeat for that. And then I'll go to Councillor Purple after.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So one of the reasons it was important for me to join your committee as acting mayor today is in Mayor Morgan's absence, and he is in meetings in New York at this time, so he's not able to join even remotely, was so that I could put his letter on the floor with regard to the master mobility plan. While I understand the councilor's desire to have a package, I think it's really important that we don't put everything together here, that we provide some clear direction to LTC with regard to their annual report. But the mayor's letter actually is not only part of the master mobility plan update, but also speaks to work that our staff needs to do in terms of updating the bylaw for the London Transit Commission. I will share with colleagues, I actually had the same concern about it being in different pieces with regard to an item that is also on SPPC tomorrow, which is a communication from the commission to open the bylaw because there's a request to consider adding some additional representation on the commission. So there are some moving parts here, but I think it would actually be beneficial rather than trying to put them all together, that we deal with these as individual votes. And this is partly because consultation has happened with our staff. I can say on the mayor's behalf that conversations were had with both our city solicitor's office and with Ms. Scher with regard to the MMP and how different components of the MMP, including this transit motion that is coming later, dovetail together, how they work together. I'm not going to put words in Ms. Scher's mouth as to what her part of the conversation with the mayor was, but I know from the mayor's perspective, because I asked why this wasn't on SPPC instead of Civic Works, and it was specific to tie it to the work of the master mobility plan, because that's where public engagement is also happening in terms of how people utilize different mode shares to get around the city. And so that's the reason why, separate from the mayor's motion on the next item for direction, I'm suggesting this item for specifically the LTC annual report in response to the letter from Dr. Preston with regard to ensuring accessibility is identified as a key strategic priority in their next strategic plan, because the mayor's motion is specific to our MMP. This motion is specific to LTC's upcoming strat plan.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarification. So we have a motion in front of us that the LTC be requested to include accessibility as a key component in their next strategic plan. I have Councillor Pribble next.
Thank you. I just want to make a comment, and just to reiterate I'm going to wait till this conversation finishes so I can, sorry.
Thank you, because I want to hear what you're saying.
Exactly, that's why I want to make sure I have your attention.
I think we're both out of order, so why don't you just go ahead?
Okay. Now, I just want to let you know, again, on behalf of all the commissioners and management at LTC, we do realize that we need to improve in specialized service. And we do know that it's an urgency, that we cannot wait for months and years to do that. Some of the stuff is going to be introduced within the budget. Some of the stuff is outside the budget, and it's going to be, as Deputy Mayor or Acting Mayor Lewis just mentioned, even though passing this motion. But I'll tell you right now that we all realize that we realize that it's got to be a key component in the strategic plan, and the additional funding asks will be from LTC, because again, some of them is additional costs. But bottom line is, the most important for everyone who is out there using the specialized service, I want to say we do know we need to improve, and we will deliver improved results for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further speakers? I also want to recognize that Councillor Frank and Councillor Hopkins are also joining us, so thank you for that as well. Any further speakers on this before we vote on this motion? Okay, seeing none, we will vote on the motion that the LTC be requested to include accessibility as a key component in their next strategic plan, and that is open for you to vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 6-0.
Okay, thank you. So now we will move back to the LTC commission to be received, the report to be received, and the added communication from Dr. Preston to be received as well. Is there any other comments or questions from members? Okay, Councillor Trasso.
Through the chair, notwithstanding your very valid explanation, which made a lot of sense, I'm still going to vote against receiving this, because I think it's so deficient that it would be not good practice for the council to take this. I know we're just receiving a report, and it's from last year, but I think that there are things that have been said in this report that I feel, in good conscience, are just wrong, and I want to see them fixed, even though it's titled a 2022 report. And someone might want to elaborate that, but I am going to be voting no on this motion.
Councillor McAllister.
Yes, thank you. And through the chair, I agree with Councillor Trasso's comments. I don't feel that it gets a satisfactory grade. I know this is for last year, but I do believe there's a lot of room for improvement. And for that reason, I will be also voting against this.
Thank you. Okay, I have Acting Mayor Lewis. Go ahead.
So colleagues, while I share the concerns about the report not necessarily reflecting my opinion on a couple of key components of the LTC's operation, I also caution against simply not receiving the report, because then we have done nothing with it. I would suggest that if there are specific things that we have objections to in the report, that we refer the report back to the LTC with some specific direction, that they can then bring an amended report back to us at a future Civic Works meeting. And I will point out the two things that I personally have some concerns with, and they are located on page 4 of the report from LTC in the key elements table. And I would say that, you know, for me personally, the ongoing development of a safe, integrated, and accessible transit service, this is the one I mentioned earlier, being satisfactory, would be a needs improvement. I would say that the one right below it, the use of proven technology supporting the effective and efficient use of delivery of transit services, while I understand that the work is progressing on that, is one that is not currently in a good grade, but is also one that is in a needs improvement category. So if I was, and I'm not putting a referral on the floor because I don't know what other colleagues feel in their own categories of evaluating this report, but if a referral back was to provide some direction to LTC, those would be two areas that I would highlight as asking them to reevaluate those two key elements before resubmitting a report. So I will leave that as this discussion continues, but rather than simply not receiving it and doing nothing with it, I would suggest that we provide some direction to LTC through a referral rather than simply rejecting the report. Because there are things in this report that are valid and accurate. When we look at the ridership recovery from the pandemic, when we look at the data on the cost per ride, like all of that data should be received by us. We shouldn't just reject the entire report. So if we're going to do something with this report other than simply receive it, let's provide some direction.
Thank you, Councillor Trosso.
I fully agree with what was just said. And I would ask if, while we continue this discussion, if you could provide some of that language to the clerk so we can draft a motion which I sense will be supported. And thank you for your observation.
Yep. Thank you for those comments. I think that was helpful to steer where our conversation was going around whether or not to receive or to refer. I'm just wondering if the committee would be looking for any information on how a referral would be dealt with from a legal perspective, if LTC has any obligation to bring that report back to committee if it was referred or if we're satisfied with where we are on that. Councillor Trosso.
As things stand right now through the chair, as a matter of law, the LTC is a separately constituted board, and it would be, in my view, their prerogative to accept this or not. And in the event that they decide not to accept it and state that they are standing on the report as it was submitted, it would then be up to this council to decide how we wanted to deal with that. So I think that as things stand right now, they are a separately constituted legal board. I don't think we have to go into closed session to understand that. We get that. So I think it would be up to them, and that's why I think the Deputy Mayor Lewis's suggestion is very wise.
Okay, thank you. And Acting Mayor Lewis, you're drafting some language currently? Okay.
Not as fast a typer as the clerk.
That's okay. Any additional comments, questions while we're awaiting that language? Okay, Councilor McAllister.
Thank you, and through the chair, I appreciate the comments by both the acting mayor and Councillor Trosso. I'm in agreement and I would be supportive of the referral. I think both those areas, as we've discussed today, definitely need improvement. Even looking at a report which is for the previous year, I do think that it's valid to give that feedback. To Councillor Trasso's point, obviously, they're within their right to contest it, but I do believe from the discussion we've had today and the past discussions we've had as committee and council, that those are areas that definitely need improvement. And I think moving forward, we really need to highlight them, especially for the strategic plan for the following years. Thank you.
Thank you. If it's okay by the committee, I'd like to ask a question of Ms. Pleshny. Just wanted to follow up on the conversation regarding the booking software. As you mentioned that we're in the RFP currently and there's going to be significant, there may be some time before that's up and running. I'm just wondering, in the interim, is there any other plans for addressing the long wait times for paratransit users currently that are having to wait and redial for hours on end every day that they are looking to make a request in advance, and whether or not there has been any changes other than that you think are currently in moving towards more improvements to the service. Thank you.
Through the chair, so the demand for service is obviously the issue. It's a supply and demand issue. That's the underlying issue. We are continuing every day to try and ramp that service up. So as the service provider has a vehicle and a driver for that vehicle, we're adding service accordingly, attempting to ramp that up. So essentially, the more quickly we can move on getting more service on the road, the rest of those issues will dissipate. So that's where our primary focus is. In terms of call takers calling, again, we're working on education with the riders. Unfortunately, because of that supply and demand issue, people tend to everyone tries to call first thing in the morning because they're trying to secure that trip, which obviously results in overloads on the call system. So we're attempting to work with riders and explain to them that, if we spread that window out, it won't be as problematic for everyone. But again, the underlying issue is that, there's more demand than there is supply. So everybody, unfortunately, is competing for those rides, and that results in everybody calling at the same time. So we are trying to work with the riders. We've already increased capacity on the call line so that there's more opportunity for on hold, but that can only go so far, and you're still going to result in people getting a busy signal.
Thank you. Councillor Cuddy, Councillor McAllister. So you were the movers and seconders of the motion to receive the LTC report and to receive the added communication from Mr. Preston. As you know, we have a potential referral coming forward. Just wondering if you would consider, how would you like to deal with your motion, if you'd like it withdrawn, or if you'd like to continue with your motion, we vote on it, and then we deal with the referral.
Thank you, through the chair. In terms of just procedure, if we withdraw, could we put the alternative on the floor? No, okay. I will withdraw then.
Thank you. And Chair, would you read the new motion if you?
Thank you. So what we're looking to do is, if you are considering withdrawing that motion, and then Acting Mayor Lewis would then put his motion forward as a referral, and I think he's just finalizing that draft, and then we'll read that out. And is the committee comfortable with the withdrawal of that motion so that we can deal with the referral? Okay, thank you. Councillor Van Meerbergen.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So we're just loading that language into eScribe for you. Take a look at. Councillor Purple.
While we are waiting through the chair to Mrs. Polichny, actually, everything that was said today or in the last few minutes, is there anything that you would like to add, or what is any feedback on what was said besides the direct questions we had for you? Would you like to add anything as of your feedback? Thank you.
Through the chair, no, again, I would like to reassure all members of council that are in the room that we understand the issues and we are doing everything we can to work through them. It's not for a matter of not trying that we're not getting where we need to be. There's just unfortunately a number of leftover pandemic-related issues that we continue to face, and we're making every effort to get through those and get the service back to where it needs to be. And I would point out, a lot of the discussion today was focused on the specialized service, but we've got the same issues on our conventional service. We're driving by people every day at stops that can't fit on the buses that are driving by. So this is a public transit issue. It's not just specialized, and we're working on all fronts to address those issues.
Thank you. Follow-up?
No follow-up. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so if you refresh your eScribe, you'll see the motion that Acting Mayor Lewis has put forward. We're in need of a seconder, but if you want to take a look at it, that the annual report be referred back to the LTC to reevaluate the grading components of the report identified by Municipal Council with regard to the grading of the key elements of the evaluation, that a revised report be submitted to a future CWC. So I'm looking for a seconder. Councillor McAllister? Any further comments or questions before we open that for voting? Seeing none, we'll open that up.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 6-0.
Thank you, and I just wanted to say thank you again to Ms. Poleshny, and thank you also to Councillor Purple for your work on LTC. I know that this, continues to be an ongoing conversation, and I really appreciate the opportunity to have that dialogue here. I also wanted to say thank you to Dr. Preston, again, for his communication, and we still have the item of his communication to be received.
Madam Chair, sorry, just a point of order, and this just may be a software glitch. The motion, the majority vote recorded in eScribe on motion 3 doesn't have the seconder listed, although Councillor McAllister was listed when the vote popped up on our screens. So just for the...
Thank you. I'll have the clerk take a look at it.
Yeah, if we can just get the clerk to make sure that that's reflected properly. Yeah.
Just to mention to everyone online, it is recorded in eScribe. I think we are just having a few technical difficulties. Thanks.
Okay, so I'm looking for a mover and seconder to receive the communication from Dr. Preston. Acting Mayor Lewis and Councillor Cuddy. Thank you. We'll open that to vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 6-0.
Okay, thank you. So we are on to item 4.3, the Mobility Master Plan Updated Strategies, Mode, Share, Target Options, and Project Evaluation Frameworks. Staff have a presentation, but I do understand, and I'm wondering if the committee would consider, we have a request for delegation status from Mr. Wallace of LDI, as you all know. I do see an urgency in him asking to go now. I'm wondering if committee would consider that before the presentation for staff, that he provides his delegation in order to help him to do whatever he has to go do. So we would need a mover and seconder if we were to accept his delegation. Okay, and we have Acting Mayor Lewis and Councillor Cuddy. Open that to vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-1.
Thank you. Okay, so we will have Mr. Wallace to give his delegation. You have 5 minutes, as you know. And thank you to our staff for waiting to give your presentation after, and you may go ahead, Mr. Wallace.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, councilors, for supporting me. I have a meeting at 1:30, which I am actually the host, so I do appreciate the opportunity. First of all, really, we just want to be on the record that we want to thank staff for being very proactive and reaching out to a number of organizations. I know they've reached out to us as an industry to look at an opportunity to sit down and talk to them about the mobility plan going forward and some of the recommendations and suggestions at an early stage, in my view, which is an excellent approach, and we do appreciate it. Just so you'd understand, like, why does LDI care? Why does the industry care? Well, the mobility plan will have a tremendous impact on everything from development charges right through to the layout of a subdivision to the design of roads. It has a tremendous impact on where and how the city will look. It isn't just about moving from A to B and how you do it with your mobility splits. It has ramifications in a number of areas. We have looked at the report. We're going to continue to look at the report. We're hoping to have a meeting in September with staff to go over some of the issues that we think are there. And just to be, to put it on your radar screen, there's no real discussion about EVs in the report. Like, where is the role in the next 30 years of electric vehicles? What does that mean in terms of mobility? And well, I know they've laid out a number of charts and suggestions on how the splits may go in the future, and we're interested in talking to them about what that is in reality and what that might be in theory. And there are other areas that we would want to highlight in terms of, for example, we are very supportive of transit. Quite the discussion beforehand, but we are supportive of transit throughout the community, but that also means in support of transit, likely higher densities along transit routes, not just rapid transit routes, but transit routes in general throughout the city, which might mean 6 stories might not work in support of transit and getting people out of cars onto transit. So there are a number of issues that we've identified so far early on. We will be looking at that discussion, and we're looking forward to a discussion on what the reality is, what's possible, and not just in theory. And what am I saying? Like, we would need to know what is the actual number of car registrations compared to population growth in London over the last decade. be a good question for you to ask, because I think you'd be surprised at how many car registrations there are in town compared to growth over the last number of years. And where is that going to go in the future? So we're happy to talk about it. I would love to stay and hear the discussion, but I'm sorry, when these don't come out on Wednesdays, this meeting I have in 2 minutes was booked long ago. So I do appreciate it, and we appreciate staff reaching out to us, and we look forward to our meeting. And I will watch this on tape after to see what the discussion was about. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we will now go to Ms. Grady, who is providing a presentation. She's traffic and transportation engineer on the master mobility plan. Go ahead.
Thank you, and thanks for having us here today for this opportunity to give you an update on the development of the Mobility Master Plan. For those who don't know me, I'm Sarah Grady. I'm one of the managers with our Transportation Planning and Design Division, and I'm also the project manager for the Mobility Master Plan. I'm here presenting on behalf of a very large team with staff from various divisions, and we also have LTC and the Middlesex London Health Unit on our team as well. The purpose of the report before you today is to keep council informed about the work that's underway for the development of the Mobility Master Plan. Input from council and the broader public is so important to make sure that this plan reflects the desires of Londoners and receives support. Development of the Mobility Master Plan has been broken into 3 phases. Phase 1 was initiated in April 2022, and it included the development of the Mobility Master Plan vision and guiding principles, which were approved by council back in December. There was extensive community consultation as part of Phase 1, and that is summarized in a Phase 1 engagement summary report, which is available on the project website. We're now in Phase 2, and the report before you today provides information on some of the initial Phase 2 activities, including the development of strategies to achieve the vision, mode share target options, and the draft project evaluation frameworks. Following this report, meaningful consultation with the community will follow. Phase 3 will include the refinement of the recommending plan, including key policy recommendations, implementation phasing, and development of a monitoring program to track and measure success. The Mobility Master Plan vision touches on various things, including economy, environment, equity, choice, safety, and London's role as a regional hub. Many of these align with a planning shift occurring in London and across Canada to advance the full spectrum of sustainable city building objectives. 8 strategies are in development, as noted on the screen, on how to achieve the vision. These strategies provide guidance for the development of the Mobility Master Plan outcomes, specifically infrastructure, programs, and policies. Each of these strategies are discussed in more detail in Appendix B of the report. We know how Londoners move around the city based on surveys and other data we have available. The MMP and future city building can help influence and support more choice for Londoners to get around. To achieve the vision of the Mobility Master Plan and support Londoners' desire for more viable options for how they move around, a more balanced approach to supporting all types of mobility is required. This balance is determined by mode share. Mode share is a proportion of all person trips in the city that are made using each mode of mobility. So the buckets that we're looking at for those are walking, cycling, transit, passenger in a personal vehicle, as well as the driver of that vehicle. Mode share is a very important metric for many reasons as outlined in the report, including that it helps inform pressures on the mobility system and how cities should invest in mobility infrastructure. The project team has developed a range of 3 potential 2050 mode share targets for this report, and it discusses these mode share target options in more detail. Some of the key factors which support achieving them include land use and population employment density, as well as transit service levels. And then the third item discussed in the report is the draft project evaluation framework. It's been developed based on the guiding principles, which were approved by council back in December. This information is primarily tables of considerations that are included in Appendix F of the report. A table of evaluation factors correlating to the guiding principles are presented for road, transit, and cycling projects. All mobility-related infrastructure projects will be evaluated using the project evaluation framework to inform the development of priority networks for each mode. Once those networks are developed for each individual mode, they'll then be combined into one integrated multimodal network. The goal of this process is to evaluate and prioritize multimodal project recommendations within the context of the entire mobility system. So this report to council is just one tactic to consult with the community and on the information contained in it. Once we've heard from more Londoners, we plan to return to committee with recommendations on these topics later this year. Those recommendations will inform the development of infrastructure needs, working towards integrated multimodal network. Public engagement event to vet the outcomes with the public is also planned for early 2024. Meaningful community consultation will continue through all phases of the development of the Mobility Master Plan. Reflecting the desires of Londoners and achieving buy-in as we go is really important. So the project schedule is being adjusted to allow for engagement with everyone interested. And then the third and final phase of the project will continue throughout 2024 and include the development of an implementation plan informed by project prioritization and project cost estimates. And that's the end of the presentation that we have for you. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Grady, for taking the time to walk us through that and providing that to the committee as well. I wanted to note that there is added communication from Mr. Hunneford and Ms. Lowen-Nair and Dr. Evans with respect to this matter as well. I know there's considerable questions from committee members, I'm sure, on this topic. I know it's quite an engaging topic for the community right now, and so I'd like to start us off with some questions. Just wondering if we had a mover and seconder on this before we start a conversation. Okay, I will look to committee to start their discussion. Councillor Trassa, did you? Go ahead. Yep, go ahead. You can start the conversation.
I'm just going to, first of all, thank you very much. I think this has been an incredible process. Every time I go out into the community, a member of your staff is there getting consultation tickets from people, and it's just incredible. And I think that a lot of, we ask the residents of London to indulge us in a lot of different consultation processes. And I would understand if people are starting to get tired of doing it, but I still sense a lot of enthusiasm for this. And I think it's because your staff has really been out there, and I so much appreciate that. And before I say anything else, I need to put that out there at the beginning. And here comes my having said that. Having said that, I don't, and I'm just going to start at the top level before I go into details. And I'm going to say my top level things, and then I'm going to yield to other members. In my opinion, this report does not convey the sense of urgency that we're facing right now in terms of our declared climate emergency, in terms of the other documents that this council has developed over the years, in terms of our strategic plan, which, while our strategic plan reserves consideration of the Mobility Master Plan, there are certainly very important decisions that have been made in this strategic plan. And the overall issue here, I think, is the extreme climate emergency that is getting worse and worse and worse. And we feel it at the global level, but we also feel it in our neighborhoods. Because as Mr. McCray is very, and this is all through the chair, by the way, as Mr. McCray is very aware, at least just looking in my ward, you're constantly being asked by residents to engage in traffic mitigation measures, just for example. So it's global, but it's also very local. And we can't deal with the emissions in China and India, but we can deal with how people are getting around this city. So I think if later on there is a suggestion that, well, you know, this isn't really a big deal because of what's going on globally, I think we just have to say, look, we're London City Council and you're London City staff, and we're just going to do the best we can working together on this. So I don't believe this report conveys the sense of urgency. That is not to say that your work is not valid up to this point. And what I would like to do maybe later in this meeting today is suggest some midterm correctives that we can do in order to get this back on what I would think would be a better track. I'm not going to go into motions yet, but an initial question you asked, initial question I have is, who is on this team? You referred to a team. One of my frustrations as a council member is I want to move this along. And I think the public wants us to move this along. And I think I'm always in favor of doing more and more and more consultation. But I think there's been a good deal of consultation on this, and I'm very anxious to start wrapping up phase 2 and getting into phase 3. I am also not satisfied as a member of this committee to just sort of receive this report and sit back for a few months and get the next report. I want to be more involved. I want to be more involved in the ongoing development of this report. And I'd like to ask, maybe this is a procedural question for the chair or the clerk, how does a council member, keeping in mind that we have to be careful about closed meeting numbers, but how does a member of this council be able to become a little bit more hands-on regarding the next steps? And I think I'll ask somebody that question before I proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scheer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There are a number of options by which council could get involved outside of the public consultation realm. We are happy to meet with any member of council to receive ideas, feedback, and look for ways to integrate that into the plan. If there's a desire from council to potentially understand the future touch points at committee, where committee work could workshop some elements of the plan, we can provide a schedule so you can see where those touch points are, where that could be done as part of either standing committee work here. I'm guessing there may be interest beyond Civic Works on this one, so it might also be an opportunity to use SPPC and do committee work at those committees. I'd be happy to provide an update to which parts of the plan you will see at what sort of approximate time and what committees we intend to proceed to. And if there are gaps within that structure, we could look for ways to fill them with special meetings or other opportunities, aware of the concerns about quorum and closed door meetings, of course.
Thank you. Follow-up, Councilor?
Through the chair, that's exceptionally helpful, and I'm going to make a suggestion later that perhaps we have this on our agenda on an ongoing basis for at least some discussion. At least that's an open meeting. I do have a technical question. What is the transportation demand management programs? Is a concept that comes up a lot throughout this. Could you just say a little bit more about what that is?
Ms. Scheer? Oh, sorry. Ms. Grady? Or Mr. Stanford?
Through the chair, there was reference to a large steering committee and sort of project team on this, and I'm happy to say that a number of folks that are in my area are very engaged on this particular project from a transportation demand management perspective. What that really means, it's policies and programs to encourage people, for the most part, to get outside of the single occupant vehicle. For example, areas like carpool, which was very common about 3-4 years ago, which has gone through a number of changes right now, will be resurrected in the very near future now that changes are occurring. assisting where possible with information and ideas on how people can get into different areas of the city. There's been a lot of good discussion on how you get transit out into industrial parks. Well, there's also a need to work with the particular businesses in those areas to make sure their employees have access to information and programs and initiatives to encourage them to use those particular situations. So in our case here, transportation demand management refers to a series of programs and policies to encourage different ways of moving around this city, very tied to two things: the commuting network, those that go to and from businesses, but also the growing area, those that move around on weekends for recreational purposes and utilitarian trips.
Councillor?
Thank you, and I think I'll yield for now. I have some other things I'll come back to, but I want to hear from some other councilors first.
Thank you. And just to reiterate some of the points that you brought up, you talked about adding this as an ongoing standing item on the agenda as one possibility. I will say that I do think that there is there's a valid opportunity to engage all of council through SPPC. So I personally would prefer that option, that this be similar to maybe the work that we did with the strat plan, and that we could engage in those conversations at SPPC so that we have the majority of council able to attend and use that working committee structure to go through the different parts of the master mobility plan. But I'm in the hands of committee in terms of what they'd like to do. Councillor McAllister, you had your hand up next.
Thank you, and through the chair, and thank you to the staff for this work. I know I've heard from a lot of my constituents in terms of this this project, a lot of interest. It's definitely something that comes up a lot. And in terms of the options, the one that I found most compelling was actually option 3. And I think it speaks to a lot of the strategic goals we've talked about before. I think it's a very bold target in terms of the mode share. And I do think that we need to have the modal and the mindset shift in London. And I think the third option presents a lot of interesting ideas. And it's not to say that these are the hard targets. I know there's a lot of feedback. Obviously, we still want the public input. I'm sure councillors have a lot of opinions in terms of how they'd like that split. But I think 3 touches on a lot of the ones that I was thinking of. And some of the things that I hear a lot that I just wanted to put out there as we're having this conversation in terms of, having, an expanded system that obviously has multimodal share, encouraging connectivity, integration, and also importantly, maintenance of whatever we decide, ensuring that these meets the needs of Londoners, but they're also well maintained as well. And I do hear a lot in terms of having a functional infrastructure that actually encourages usage, especially when that comes to our cycling paths or public transit, that we can actually support it through our infrastructure. And I look forward to, for instance, with our BRT, seeing that really encourage that. And part of that is also, as we heard earlier, in terms of infill and planning appropriately, that we have transit corridors that encourage the infill, so we're building up and supporting that density appropriately through our master mobility plan. And so I'm curious to hear what other colleagues have to say in terms of their options, but I'm very intrigued and supportive of option 3 currently. Thank you.
Thank you. Acting Mayor Lewis?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will share first. I'll just be upfront. I'm not enthusiastic about option 3 because I don't think we will meet those targets, and I don't like setting ourselves up for failure. I think we have to be realistic about the fact that, and Mr. Wallace alluded to it actually, and that's going to lead into my question for staff, specifically around electric vehicles, which we know the federal government is certainly putting, and the provincial government is putting a lot of investment towards. Even here at the city, and Ms. Pelesny is still with us, we're investing in electrification of our bus fleet. That electrification comes with the need for supportive infrastructure. Electric vehicles do need to be recharged. And so that has a different impact, I think, in our mobility plans and our infrastructure planning than a traditional fossil fuel powered vehicle. We're not talking about a gas station to refuel. We're talking about parking your vehicle and plugging it in for a period of time. And we're also talking about charging stations. I know that, you know, again, we talk about the electrification of our bus fleet. London Transit Commission has a headquarters redesign going on, and they also have to factor in the electrification of their vehicles in terms of what that looks like. So could staff provide a little bit of commentary in terms of how we're differentiating passenger vehicle mode share with electric vehicles versus the conventional vehicles that are in use today? Because there are different impacts between those two modes of personal passenger vehicles.
Ms. Grady?
Through you, Chair. Thank you for the question. Yeah, the adoption of electric vehicles and connected and automated vehicles for that matter is certainly part of the solution, but it's not the complete solution. One thing we do know is that the pace of electrical vehicle adoption in London is slower than the overall pace in Ontario and Canada as a whole. It's an important consideration for the near-term emissions to meet our 2030 goals, as well as our net zero emissions for 2050. And we do have assumptions on EVs, which is going to be incorporated into our modeling, looking at the rate of adoption and things like that. But it's the use of EVs also does not address public health concerns and other safety concerns related to automobile dependency, such as inadequate physical activity leading to obesity, as well as road safety concerns for people who bike and walk. It's really an equity issue as well, because there's a number of people who cannot drive for or choose not to for various reasons. So I guess to answer your question, we are incorporating zero emission vehicle assumptions in relation to our climate goals, but it's we are still considering it as part of the mode share for personal vehicles in general for a lot of those factors I just mentioned.
Ms. Scheer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In addition to Ms. Grady's answer, I think it's important to recognize that an EV still takes up space on a road. And right now, the same amount of space generally as an ICE or internal combustion engine vehicle. So replacing the current fleet strictly with EV, while that has emissions impacts, it certainly is a quieter, less smelly experience for people choosing active modes. That space requirement doesn't change, so it has to be considered as part of a context to moving away from driving by oneself as well, providing other choices and options in addition to the personal passenger vehicle, or the road needs really don't change that much. It becomes a charging infrastructure discussion, but you still have to deal with all those capacity and safety concerns that come with the predominant mode share being the personal automobile driven alone.
Follow-up?
Yes, so first of all, thanks to Ms. Grady for reminding me that I'm also looking forward to automated vehicles, because the day that I can say, hey Siri, drive me to City Hall is one that I look forward to very much. Then I can get some work done while it drives me here. But I wanted to follow up on the needs for transition, and I think about, I know I'm focusing a little bit more on the LTC's move to electrification of our transit fleet, but it's related to the master mobility plan in terms of, I know lots of engagement has been happening, but I wonder in particular what level of engagement has been occurring with the Thames Valley and Catholic District School Boards. I know that they are undertaking a feasibility study. I know they're working with LTC on getting students off of the yellow bus modes, but also in providing students the opportunity to access transit at a way that it's the same sort of opportunity that we provide to Western and Fanshawe students right now, in terms of through their education, providing them access to transit passes so that they have that opportunity from the beginning to start using buses at an earlier time in their life. And I know we are providing the free transit for kids under 12 right now, but in regards to the mobility plan and thinking about our young people, how much engagement has happened both with the school board, but as well with, you know, secondary school student councils and things like that to get younger perspectives rather than, you know, perhaps a little bit older demographic that might see a Facebook post or attend a public meeting or respond that way. You know, are we reaching them through the school board?
Thank you, Ms. Grady. Or Mr. McRae.
Sure. Well, yeah, we're all eager on this project. Yeah, it's a good point. Youth is a target area for our communications plan. We're currently talking about that. We actually just sent out a meeting invitation to the school boards and My Big Yellow Bus, the student transportation service. And we connect with them on an ongoing basis, you know, through day-to-day operations where we're talking about these issues. So certainly it has been happening, and we're looking forward to connect further with both the administrators and the youth voices.
Follow-up?
Yes, so thanks for that, because I will share, you know, if we were going to talk about the transition of mode share, and I've talked about my hockey coach hat many times, but when I see 17, 18-year-olds who are graduating or about to graduate high school, and the prime goal of their part-time job is to save money to buy a car. So if we're not reaching them at this age, to even see a mode share transition by 2030 is going to be a challenge when they're out registering that vehicle to as a London resident. So I think that it's really important that while I hear the councillor's concern about wrapping up the consultation, I don't think we've done enough in terms of reaching some certain target demographics, most notably being not the people who own cars today, the people who are looking to buy cars in the next 5 years. Because if we're not providing them an opportunity to have a say in the transportation options that are available to them 5 years from now when they're making that decision, we're not going to change mode share. So I think that that's a really key component that needs to be followed up on a little more. I don't know if you've got a speakers list, Madam Chair, that is fairly extensive, but I do want to touch on, because it is tied to this item, I do want to touch on the mayor's letter. So perhaps I will yield to Councillor Frank, but then if I could ask you to put me back on the list, and then I will come back to deal with the motion from the mayor.
Will do. Okay, Councillor Frank.
Thank you. I do have one or two questions. So through the chair, I was just hoping, and I'm not sure if I missed it because I came in a little late, sorry. But I'm wondering if anyone asked if the option 3, the 35% mode share, would that put us on track to meeting our CEAP emission targets for transportation? I'm just wondering, obviously, option 1 in no way will put us anywhere close to being on track to meet any targets that we have for climate change. But does option 3 get us there?
Ms. Grady, go ahead.
Thank you, through your chair. Did touch on it a little bit, and right now we're looking at the 2050 targets. We haven't really started looking at the analysis for the more near-term goal, which will be even more of a challenge to meet. And so looking at 2050, we do anticipate that there will be a large number of zero-emission vehicles on the road. So we'll be working towards that. However, the climate goals were very important, and in particular in the near term are going to be a challenge to meet. There's many other factors that we're looking at as well about, managing road congestion, improving safety, providing more viable options. So I think all options can work towards achieving the climate goals, in particular looking at 2050, but it's those near-term goals that will be more of a challenge.
Follow-up?
Thanks, yeah. So, sorry, just to clarify, for option 3, would that meet our 2050 target?
Ms. Grady?
Through you, Chair. Looking at 2050 and looking at EV uptake assumptions, it is assumed that, so right now the assumption is that by 2035, 100% of new light-duty and passenger vehicle cars will be zero emission. So looking at that information and based on that target, we assume that about 90% of vehicles on London roads will be zero emissions by 2050, because about 10% of all vehicles are typically over 15 years old or older. So the greenhouse gas emissions tool that we'll be using for this, and we will be applying that to all the options. One thing I think is important to note is that it only estimates direct tailpipe emissions, and they're assumed to have zero tailpipe emissions, but there's some associated with the manufacturing process as well. Well, that's not directly tied, incorporated into our SEEP goals.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, yes. I think given that information, option 3 is really the only viable option for London. It doesn't sound necessarily like it might even not hit our targets. And if we're picking option 1 or 2, which for sure won't hit our targets, I really don't think that's fair to our future generations. So I'm going to be very supportive of option 3, or actually I probably would have been supportive of a even higher modal split. But that being said, I'm happy to be supportive of that. I will say, for anyone who is really hoping for us to make all our cars electric, we know that won't solve our problems, but hypothetically, if that is the goal, then I hope that you'll be very supportive of the motion I have next on the list, which is to phase out gas in our electricity grid, because for electric vehicles, we know they charge using electricity. And if, as we're seeing more and more gas in our electricity grid, more and more of our electric vehicles are actually not 100% emission-free. They're currently not 100% emission-free in Ontario anyway, because we use about 7 to 18% gas in the grid on any given day. But that all being said, if we are moving in that direction, I hope people will be supportive of my next letter. But I think I'll yield there. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I go back to Acting Mayor Lewis, did any other members, committee, or visiting councilors have questions or comments? Councillor Van Meerbergen, sorry, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I wanted to follow up with staff. I'm just looking for a little bit more clarification. I see from what I've gleaned here, there's basically 4 basic modes that appear in the charts. I'm just wondering, there are other categories that also put pressure on our road system and the demand for our road system. And that includes, of course, school buses during the school year. I think most of us know how many there are and that rely on the road system. Also transport trucks, commercial trucks, commercial vehicles of all sorts, any sizes. And also rideshare like Uber and taxis. They're all having to use and put pressure on the road system, and indeed transit itself. So I'd just like to know, how are school buses and transport trucks factored in the thinking of this mobility plan?
Thank you, Mr. McCray.
Yeah, thank you. The evaluation of which mode is used is based on asking the person taking the trip, if it's in a vehicle, are they the driver or are they the passenger? So so that passenger vehicle, the passenger mode would apply to many of those that you are referring to. We certainly know that there are evolving needs. So, that would include modes such as taxi and Uber. With respect to freight, it's kind of a category of its own. I mean, it's captured within personal vehicle driver, but it's considered, sort of as it's a very special topic in that it's tied to economic growth, London's role as a regional transportation hub. And so it's garnering special attention and special consideration as we move forward.
Follow-up, Councillor?
Yeah, okay, no, I appreciate that response. I guess my point is that there's a lot of pressures on our road system, and we have to keep up with it, and we have to always be mindful of that fact as we go through this process of the reality and the actual needs of Londoners and also our economy. Certainly when it comes to freight and transport trucks, et cetera. So for these various reasons, I mean, it's very clear to me that option 1 is the strongest. This is what Londoners want. This is what Londoners expect. They expect that they can get in a vehicle and be able to drive around their own city. transport trucks have to be able to get around efficiently in a workable, functional road system. And I think not to be realistic and just to just wish that we can do other things and maybe sprinkle some pixie dust is not the reality that's going to present itself to us. And that's not what our electors and voters are expecting from us. They want us to meet them with what they want and what they need. And I think we have to be very mindful as we go through this process to be realistic at all times. Thank you, Jared.
Thank you, Councillor. That was a comment, I take it, and I don't remember anyone referencing pixie dust, but okay. I see Councillor Hopkins has her hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for recognizing me. I just would like to make a few comments. I really do appreciate the comments that I've heard already. I would like to just follow up with a comment around the options. I don't think we have a choice, but option 3, if we want to make change and meet our climate change objectives, we have to have at least option 3. I do believe the community is usually ahead of governments when it comes to wanting to make a difference and creating a change. Residents are way ahead of what we need to do as governments, and we do have to catch up with the community's concerns to make a difference. We do it now. We plan for the future. It's not going to happen overnight. We need to make decisions today for the future generation. I would like to follow up as well on a couple of comments that I heard from the committee. I really have been sitting here listening very intently and appreciate everyone's comments and thoughts. I know community engagement is very important. I've been doing that myself in the community. I represent a community that is all about development, and we have very few options of moving around. So this mobility plan is very dear and near to the representation that I bring to council. I do want to follow up about the public engagement. We can all, in particular, engage in our communities, get that information, pass it on to staff. It is important that we get this plan moving sooner than later. I appreciate Acting Mayor Lewis's comments around the youth. It is important that we hear from them, but having a number of young people in my family that comparing the youth today to the youth in my generation, when you turned 16, it was automatic. You got a driver's license, got a car for a couple $100. Wasn't a big deal. I find very few young people today aren't really going out and getting their license at 16. It may be something that they can have and do to supplement the family and moving around, but getting another car and adding to that footprint. I do believe that younger generation today does not want that large footprint, that want that smaller footprint. But I think it's important that we definitely engage with youth, but the youth today are very, very different from different past generations when it comes to driving vehicles. My last comment is to committee members, just to, I'll leave it with you, but I would like to see this mobility plan come to the committee of a whole. We did that through the BRT process. There's a lot of interest in other councillors being engaged and informed in this mobility process. I think it can move that process along faster if it does go to strategic priorities and planning committee. With that, those are my comments. I appreciate having the opportunity just to pass on a few thoughts that I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I do have a number of counselors, visiting counselors that have asked to speak as well, or to ask additional questions. Before we do that, though, again, just to see whether or not we're having a discussion right now about the different options that are in front of us, but again, we're here today to receive and to not make a decision on those options at this time. I just want to reiterate that and see if anyone's looking to put forward a motion to move or to second to the report that's in front of us, as well as the presentation. Acting Mayor Lewis is willing to move it. Councillor Chaucer, are you looking to second or?
No, I would be prepared to actually make some substantive amendments. I wanted to hear this discussion. I'm inclined to want to take option 1 off the table right now. I think it's very close to option 2, and I would like to see some further refinement given to option 3. I think it's correct to say we're just here to hear a report today, and this is not a decision point on the options. But I think that option 3 is broad enough. Is broad enough that it can be broken down into maybe 3A or 3B, or if you eliminate 1, it would become 2, or maybe you'd make it 4. I don't know about the numbering, but I think that the report points out very, very, very well some of the challenges that we're going to have in terms of reaching option 3, and so I would like to make a motion to amend what's on the table right now to ask, number 1, ask the staff to consider eliminating option 1. I don't think we can do that on the floor. I'm not sure. Can I ask for option 1 to be eliminated on the floor, or should I just ask staff to come back and maybe collapse option 1 and option 2 as one option? That's a procedural question.
Thank you. Okay, so I had Councillor Cuddy's hand up to second the motion. So then if you're looking to make amendments, then it's moved and seconded, and then we can look at amendments. Okay. So we've got Acting Mayor Lewis who has moved, and then we've got a seconder. So we're having discussions about amendments. I do have other visiting councillors that also wanted to okay. I know Councillor Frank had her hand up, and then I'll go back to Councillor McAllister if that's okay. And then we'll have further discussion. Thank you.
Thanks. Yes, I can't vote, but I'm very appreciative of Councillor Chaucer's perspective, because I think option 1 is almost hilarious. If I was to try and print out page 21 of the report and go door to door and say, "Hi, resident of Ward 11, in 2050, would you like to sit in traffic on every single arterial road in our city for the same amount of property tax that you'd have to pay?" People would laugh at me. Like, why would we ever even move option 1 forward in any conceivable way when you're essentially just locking everyone into gridlock for the majority of the time that they spend commuting anywhere in the city? So I just don't see the point in wasting staff resources and our time even considering option 1. That being said, if staff want to use it as a baseline and work their way up, perhaps that's why they're including it as an option. So they have like, this is why we don't want to do this. I'm fine to leave it. I'm not really sure if maybe that's why they included it. But in no way could we ever go to the public saying, we're essentially locking you into decades of gridlock. Enjoy the rest of your time commuting in the city. We already get enough complaints about traffic. I don't think that signing us up for that in perpetuity is a good use of anyone's time. So I don't think we can sprinkle any pixie dust on option 1 and try and make it viable. So I'd be with Councillor Chaucer unless staff have a better explanation as to perhaps why they're including option 1 as an option in this package.
Thank you, Ms. Scheer.
Madam Chair, we wanted to provide a range of options for the community to consider before providing a recommendation to council. As certainly we've heard a range of opinions in the community, from none of these are aggressive enough to all of them are too aggressive in past discussions. This is really just our opportunity to provide that information to you in advance for us to go out and consult with something you've seen. If council wishes for any of these options to be eliminated prior to us engaging the community, that is certainly your purview. It will narrow our scope in terms of the conversation we're having, and we would serve at your pleasure in that regard.
Thank you. Follow-up, Councillor?
Just that I would support taking off option one then to reduce the workload on our staff who are already very busy and I'm sure would appreciate some scoping.
Thank you. Councillor McAllister.
Thank you, and through the chair. Again, I appreciate all the conversation we've had today. And just to kind of reiterate what's been said, I agree with my colleagues. I think option one, for me, is off the table. I'll leave that up for committee to vote, but I would like to focus on the other two. And I just want to say that I think the lack of viable alternatives to personal vehicle usage does largely fall on government, but it is not solely on us. I do think that there are funding partnerships available with other levels of government. We have tapped into them previously, and I think in terms of mode share, I would like to encourage us to continue with those efforts. And I just want to comment also that if we don't invest in substantive change, we won't see anything. And if we set the bar too low, which is my issue with option one, we won't invest accordingly. It's not just us, obviously, as I just said, it's other levels of government. And that's why I don't personally like option one. I think it sets the bar too low. And we won't see any substantive change from that in terms of the mode share that we are hoping to see by 2050. And I think what the objective of this, in my opinion, is that we want to see a better and more equitable split in mode share. We don't want our roads to take that burden. As Councillor Frank said, it just encourages traffic congestion. And I think all Londoners can agree that it is particularly bad out there. And I do think we have to work towards a more equitable split in terms of options for Londoners to get around our city. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Acting Mayor Lewis next.
Thank you. So I hope I'm going to focus this in a little bit here. And I'm going to preface my comments by saying I actually don't have a problem with eliminating option one. Option one as a baseline is a baseline, but we've already got the 2019 numbers here, and essentially option one is just status quo. There's very little change. We've spent a fair amount of time at this committee, even today, talking about transit and the need for transit service improvement. And when we look at both option two and option three, the biggest mode share change is in transit. So yes, if we're investing in transit, we want more people to take the bus. So I'm okay with actually shrinking staff's workload a little bit, because I'm sure we'll find something else to put on their plate, and removing option one from the future engagement piece. What I would say to colleagues, though, is if that's what you want to amend, let's get a motion on the floor to that so that we can deal with that particular choice and then move forward. Because the original intent today was to receive the report, not to make a decision on only endorsing one option. But I don't think there's anything wrong with taking one of the options out and leaving the future work to be a narrowed focus on options 2 and 3. So I just wanted to ask people to perhaps get focused in on the motion to receive the report is here. If you want to amend that, and I'm hearing some willingness to do that, and me too, is let's get a motion on the floor to remove option one.
Thank you. Back over to Councillor Trasso. Go ahead.
So I'd like to receive the report, and this is a motion through the chair to the clerk. I'd like to receive the report with the removal of option one, which this isn't part of the motion, which leaves option 2 and option 3. And that further, the city clerk is requested to consider shifting some of this discussion to the SPPC. That's the second piece. And the third piece is councillors are encouraged. Now, I don't know if we need a motion to do this, but I want to say it anyway. Councillors are encouraged to engage, to step up their engagement in their wards on the implications of options 2 and option 3, and that staff be available to assist us with that, which I'm sure they would be. And I think I'm going to leave it at that, because I think it would be premature to say, okay, let's adopt option 3. Right now, I don't think there's support for that, but I think by eliminating option 1, we've at least focused this a little bit. And quite frankly, option option 2 is incrementally better than option 1, but incrementally. So that's my motion. And if there is an opportunity for individual counselors to become sort of, I don't know if we could do this, members of your working group, I think at that point, maybe the chair or the mayor would want to consider asking someone to do that. I don't think that needs to be part of the motion, but I want to express I've made such a fuss about this that I feel as if I should volunteer to take on some of the heavy lifting that has to be done. So that's my motion.
Thank you, Counselor. Okay, I see Ms. Westlake Power has her hand up, I think, to help us with how we're moving this around procedurally. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, as I understand, the committee already has a motion on the floor, and that is related to receiving the report. So unless there is a motion to amend that motion that's already moved and seconded, I would suggest the committee first deal with that and then introduce an additional motion. In addition, I would like to clarify that the city clerk does not have the discretion about directing, the city clerk has some discretion about directing matters to specific committees for consideration. However, in the past where council as a whole has deemed it necessary or advisable to do so, they have passed a motion that would direct all related matters to go to a specific committee. And that would be my recommendation for the committee's consideration.
Okay, Acting Mayor Lewis, go ahead.
So I'm going to try and help with this a little bit. And let's perhaps deal with these piece by piece, because I will say I'm going to want to call sending things to SPP separately. And I will speak to that if that gets put on the floor. But perhaps we could suggest, if Councillor Trussow is amenable to an amendment to the motion to receive, and the amendment would be, and that civic administration be directed to remove option 1 from future scoping of the master mobility plan. And I think if we deal with that one first, I think we can probably very clearly get option 1 deleted from the future work.
And we can come back to the
And
other.
then we can do, yeah.
Yes, I agree.
Just looking to Councillor McAllister, are you okay to add that amendment to the main motion as you were the seconder? Okay.
Councillor Van Meerbergen, do you have your hand up? Go ahead.
I just want some clarification. So we're going to move to receive separately from the other stuff.
Thank you. Are you asking for it to be separated?
Yes, please. And if would this be the right time to comment on the removal of option 1?
Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so we heard from Ms. Scher that they were proceeding, giving the whole envelope of options. And now, all of a sudden, we've decided as a committee, or not decided yet, but we have this idea that the proposal should be narrowed down to what the public can comment on. I think that's highly dictatorial and frankly anti-democratic. There are a number of people that would like to hear the range. Like, what is the range here that they can examine and see for themselves? But we're taking this approach that we know best, the public doesn't, and frankly, it's distasteful. I really, really don't think that this is how we should be behaving as a committee going forward at this point. So I certainly will not support taking options off the table, certainly at this stage in the process.
Thank you. Okay. So I'm looking to committee. I heard from Councillor Van Meerbergen that he'd like this separated, so we're going to separate the motions into separate motions. Any further comment or discussion before we look to open different parts of this motion? Acting Mayor Lewis, go ahead.
Yes, so what we have right now is a main motion has been moved to receive, and then an amendment is on the floor to provide some direction to Civic Administration. So are we dealing, right now, are we not just dealing with the amendment and then we would come back to the main motion as amended? And that would allow for a second amendment to Councillor Trussell's other concerns. So I think if we can just deal with the amendment.
Thank you. Yes, we are dealing with it just as an amendment. Okay, so the amendment should be, if you refresh, you should be able to see the amendment so that everyone can take a look at it. That Civic Administration be requested to remove okay, so that Civic Administration be requested to remove 2.4.1 mode transit target share option 1 from the master mobility plan update. Any further comments, questions before we open that amendment? Okay, seeing none, that'll be open to vote.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-1.
Okay, then we'll return to the main motion. I understand there are potential additions to that or amendments to that motion. Councillor Trassa?
I wanted to address the concern that was raised about having broader participation from the SPPC, so other councillors could have some of the discussions built in to their agendas, and I understand that the deputy mayor wants to, the acting mayor wants to speak against that, so I'd like to hear if there's some way of accommodating both of these. I think my personal request is something that I could speak with staff with on the side, or the mayor. So I think the SPPC, the jurisdiction question, I think is the next item on for determination, and I would yield.
Thank you. Acting Mayor Lewis.
Thank you. Colleagues, I'm going to jump into this with some experience from a prior term of council. We could really land everything at SPPC. We really could. Everything is a decision of all 15 members of council at the end of the day. When we start moving around things from specific committees to committee of the whole to council, we really start going down a slippery slope. And I really want to encourage people to think about the fact that every one of us gets to attend any standing committee meeting anytime we want. We all get the staff reports, so we all get to read the same information. We can all attend and ask questions, and at the end of the day, while we don't all get a vote at the standing committee, and you know, we were starting off the committee when Councillor Rahman clarified that there were 6 votes because I was voting on the mayor's behalf. Councillor Trussell joked that that would have been helpful yesterday at Corporate Services if I could have had 2 votes, one for myself and one for the mayor. But I didn't get to have 2 votes there. And I didn't get to have 2 votes at PEC last night. I voted at Planning Committee last night because I'm a member of Planning Committee, not because I'm the acting mayor. Today I'm voting as the acting mayor. But we all get a vote at council. We can all move amendments. We can all vote against things at council. We can ask for votes to be separated at council. So I really encourage folks to think about the fact that when you start moving one thing from a committee, in this case, the MMP from Civic Works, then you are opening the door to every other request that everything should be a decision of council as a whole. And everything is a decision of council at the whole, at the council meeting. You know, the housing and homelessness plan is at SPPC. That's a huge volume of work that we are all undertaking together. We get updates on the industrial land strategy at Corporate Services. That actually reflects on potential changes to the urban growth boundary, which will come through the Planning and Environment Committee. These things do land at different committees for different reasons, but we all get the information, we all get the ability to engage, and we all do get a vote at the end of the day. So, you know, I would also remind you on the master mobility plan, we see the staff in front of us right now, because these are the staff who are working on the master mobility plan. If we move this to SPPC, then we are asking Mr. Mathers, and we are asking Ms. Smith, and we are asking all the other deputy city managers and their directors who may be there for other reports to sit through SPPC while we discuss this as well. And so we are actually not just decreasing our own productivity, but we're decreasing the productivity of staff. So I just really encourage folks to let the clerks make the call on what committee things land at, because we all will get a say at the end of the day.
Thank you. I appreciate the back and forth on this conversation. Councillor Trossa?
Do I have a motion on the floor to this effect?
No.
Now? Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments related to the item in front of us to receive and the communications to receive, as well as the presentation? Okay, see. I was going to try to buy you some time, but okay. All right, well, with that, we'll open that to a vote for committee. If you refresh your screen, you'll be able to see it. Sorry, Councillor Van Meerbergen, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to clarify, this is the main motion as amended?
Should be as amended.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Or is it just receiving the motion that staff put forward originally?
Thank you. It should be as amended, so we'll make sure that's on your screen correctly. Hold on. Okay, we're just updating that to include the amendment. Okay, so in front of you now should be the motion as amended to vote on.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 5-1.
Okay, thank you. Mobility Master update, you would have seen there was also an added communication from Mayor Morgan, and I'll go to Acting Mayor Lewis to present that communication.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, the addeds on there, I do hope that colleagues have had a chance to read it, review it. I do hope that you will be supportive of it. I certainly am 100% supportive of what the mayor is asking for us here. And this is really related back to the London Transit Commission and the discussion we were having a little bit earlier. As we are moving forward with the start of the rapid transit operations on the Wellington Gateway, the Downtown Loop, and the East London Link, the electrification of the transit fleet, the housing plan, and the path to 47,000 units. Our regional transportation is a part of our master mobility plan. Our transit is a key part of our master mobility plan, and the area that we're looking for one of the largest mode share shifts in. So the bylaw that we currently have that constitutes the London Transit Commission has a language that is about consulting with municipal council on local transportation policies. The mayor is suggesting that because this is going to be an even more important thing to have coordinated over the next few years, we need to take a few steps. The first is to request that, and this language is in your e-scribe, that the LTC be formally requested to develop a detailed plan for the next 4 years to provide clear information on how the LTC will be implementing our strategic plan as a council. B is that it will report back they will report back to SPPC with the results of that at the October 31st meeting of 2023. So we will get that work plan on how their strat plan and our strat plan integrate. C, that we would provide minimum annual, semi-annual reports to SPPC through the terms of our council strategic plan, and allow that, therefore, but for continued consultation with council on local transportation policy. And finally, the D clause is that we have staff review the current bylaw and report back with any recommended changes to reflect the necessary collaboration between LTC and the City of London in delivering on Council's 2023 to 2027 strategic plan. So those are four very important clauses. I'm happy to answer the questions that colleagues may have from the mayor's perspective to the best of my ability. Obviously, I am not the mayor, although the amount of work I've put in already on a Tuesday makes me think he should give me his pay this week. But I will do my best if colleagues have any questions to the specific motion.
Thank you, and I'd be happy to make the motion for you to get that pay, but I don't think I can do that this committee.
I think that has to go to
Okay, any comments or questions on the mayor's added? Yep, looking for a seconder. Councillor Chausa. Okay, thank you. So I will, sorry, Paul, were you looking to speak on that matter? Okay, we will open that for voting. Councillor Van Eerbergen.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 6-0.
Okay, thank you everyone for all of your participation in that discussion on item 4.3, and thank you to staff for the report as well as all the great work so far. I think we had some great discussion on how we should proceed with the master mobility plan, but I do hear committee members asking for more engagement, asking for more regular updates on the master mobility plan, and so hope to continue that discussion with staff to move that forward as well. Okay, our next item was the added from Councillor Frank, the Climate Emergency Action Plan phase out of gas. Unfortunately, she had to run to another meeting, as our meetings don't usually run this long, so I understand that she had something else booked. I'm wondering if committee would consider dealing with her added at a future meeting that she's able to attend. Okay, should we?
I'll move that this be referred to a future meeting of the Civic Works Committee.
Thank you, and I have a second from Councillor Cuddy. So we'll look to the next meeting of Civic Works to address that. Councillor Trasso?
Could we just confirm that if we defer this, we will have time for it to go up to a council meeting in time for the AMO consultations?
Ms. Scheer, I'm sorry that I know that some quick math there to
Madam
figure
Chair,
out if
I'm
we can do
checking
it in time.
dates at this, as we speak.
I think Ms. Westlake Power has her hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, if this is referred to the next meeting of the Civic Works Committee, it will be dealt with on August the 15th, and then it won't get to council until August the 29th, which is after the AMO conference.
Councillor Trasso?
In which case, can we either A, try to work this out at this meeting, given the time sensitivity of the matter, or, and I almost hate to say this, B, refer it to the SPPC meeting coming up?
Okay, I see Acting Mayor Lewis's hand up. Go ahead.
So let me offer this suggestion. I think it'd be perfectly fine for the committee to refer it to the next CWC committee, but then for Councillor Frank to consult with the clerk, given the timing of AMO, to see if this could be landed on the next council agenda. She would have to make the case with the clerk that it is an urgent time sensitive, but I think given the nature of your concern, Councillor Trussell, with regard to AMO, I think that there's a way for her to make that as an emergent motion at council if she wished to do that. I'd like to leave it in her hands just because it is her communication in motion as to which path is the best forward for her.
Thank you, and I see Ms. Westlake Power has her hand up again.
Yes, thank you through the chair. Just to add some procedural context again, but I believe that the acting mayor has addressed it. Would the councillor like to submit it to council directly? It would need to meet some specific parameters, and referring it to, for this committee to refer it to the Strategic Priorities and Policy Committee is not an option, because that would need to go through a committee cycle in order to approve it. We wouldn't just put it onto the agenda for tomorrow's meeting, or the following week there's a special meeting. So it's pretty specific. It's very specific about what can be addressed at that time.
Thank you.
So her option would be to bring it as an emergent motion to council, which if it's given 24 hours notice, she could put it on the floor. Is that correct?
Thank you, or committee could deal with it. I mean, she submitted a letter, it's quite detailed. She's provided the motions that she would like to have moved, and she's not a member of the committee, so she wouldn't have been able to move them anyways. So it's up to committee as to how you'd like to deal with it. Councillor McAllister.
Thank you, through the chair. The councillor has indicated that she could return at 3. I don't know if it's amenable to recess for 20 minutes versus postponing.
Yeah, thank you. Well, we do have one more item, which is the item 2.7. So we could move to item 2.7 and then see where we land in terms of timing. If the committee's willing. And we could also take a break, which probably would also help. Okay, if the committee is okay with dealing with item 2.7 right now, Councillor Van Meerbergen?
Well, with regard to this added item that came onto the agenda from Councillor Frank, I don't see what the problem is with referring it to the next Civic Works meeting. Why is it so imperative that this go to AMO? We haven't even heard from staff on this. Like, I'm not getting the concept here.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Trosso, go ahead.
Yeah, the concept is she's a member of this council who has the ability to bring forward an emergent motion and have it dealt with in a timely way, especially with AMO coming up. I think it's well within her prerogative to do that, and I salute her for taking the initiative to try to get this on the agenda. That's the concept.
No, I understand that this is from her perspective, but from other perspectives, we have this here. She's not here to discuss it. It's not relating to anything on our agenda today. So what is wrong with referring it to the next Civic Works?
Councillor Cuddy?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair, I agree with Councillor Van Meerbergen. This isn't a pending or critical issue. It can be referred to the next Civic Works meeting. I don't think anything's going to happen at AMO with respect to this, so I don't see why we need to rush it forward. Thank you.
Okay, so right now we have a moved and seconded motion to defer. So please, if the committee would like to let me know what you'd like to do with this. Councillor Trosso, go ahead.
Since we're, through the chair, since we're not done with this meeting yet, and we at least have one other item, and she will be back shortly, could we just let this go until after the consent item that was removed?
Thank you. Acting Mayor Lewis?
I'm willing to withdraw my motion to refer with the committee's consent so that we can then move on to 2.7. So we can also let the staff who are here for 2.7 provide us answers and then be free to do the rest of their job. And then if Councillor Frank is not back, we can deal with a motion to refer again. I will say that I will be leaving at 3 p.m. for another meeting myself, so I will not be here at 3 when she returns. So let's deal with 2.7. I will withdraw my motion. Councillor Cuddy was my seconder, so I'll see if he's amenable to moving with 2.7 first.
Thank you. Councillor Cuddy, would you consider that?
Yes, thank you. I'll agree with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm hearing that the committee would like to move on to. No worries. So I'm hearing from the committee that they'd like to move on to item 2.7. I need your consent to do so. Okay, seeing that the majority are in agreement, we'll move on to item 2.7, which is the Adelaide Street North Improvement Environmental Study Report, Notice of Completion. Does staff want to provide a quick introduction to this topic? Councillor, if you'd like a break, I'm happy to take a break. Would we, okay?
No.
No, I don't think we need, sorry, through you, Chair, I don't think we need to take a break. Why don't we just continue on?
Well, because I'm the one.
Okay, so why don't we? Okay, so I'm hearing a request for a break. Would you entertain 10 minutes, 5 minutes break? 5 minutes? Okay, I see Councillor McAllister has put his hand up for a 5-minute break. Councillor Cuddy has seconded it. By a show of hands, all in favor of a break? 5 minutes? Okay, we'll see you back at 2:50. Thank you very much. And I will go to staff to see if they wanted to provide comment before we start our discussion on this report. Mr. Dales?
Okay, thank you, and through the chair. So the report that you have before you provides an overview of the environmental assessment process that has been completed for the Adelaide Street North Corridor from Fanshawe Park Road East to Sunningdale. A draft environmental study report, an ESR, has been completed and is available on the city website. That report details the various improvements, recommended improvements that are proposed for the corridor. And these improvements have been identified through the EA process with a review from a complete streets corridor lens. So essentially looking at improvements, comprehensive improvements, including active transportation, new sidewalks, cycling facilities on Adelaide Street and at major intersections. The improvements also include additional vehicular capacity improvements to the Adelaide corridor. I would note that in 2021, we did undertake a review of major transportation projects under utilizing the climate emergency screening tool that has been developed. And that the findings, the review that was completed was reported to council at that time. And we did receive direction from council at that time that the widening of Adelaide Street from Fanshawe Park to Sunningdale be suspended. However, we were also requested to complete the environmental assessment process in order to inform and identify the improvements to the intersection at Sunningdale and Adelaide. So in terms of next steps, subject to council approval, we would finalize the report and provide a public notice regarding the study completion. I would note that the timing of the improvements, the corridor improvements, would be subject to the MMP. However, we are looking at near-term improvements at the intersection of Sunningdale Road. Certainly happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the report. Now, I understand that what's in front of us today is part of the EA requirement that a notice of study completion for the project be filed, the environmental study report be placed on the public record for a 30-day review period, and then part A was that it be accepted. I do understand there's some questions from committee on this item, so I will look to committee for questions and whether or not to move the recommendation that's here. Councillor Trosset.
Yes, since I pulled this and since I've raised my concerns already, I think I should start. I believe that this environmental assessment is not complete, and I'm going to suggest that it go back for further study. And I want to be specific. Number one, I think there needs to be a no widening option. We have three options with respect to widen symmetrically from the center, widen to the east, and widen to the west. So I guess my initial question is, why is there not a no widening option?
Mr. Dales?
Thank you. Through the chair, so as part of the environmental assessment process, we do look at broader planning alternatives associated with our different projects, and the do-nothing alternative is certainly a viable option that is assessed as part of the environmental assessment, and it has been reviewed as part of this overall process.
Follow-up, Councillor?
Yes, quite a bit. So, through the chair, I'm not suggesting the do-nothing option. And I think adding a don't widen option is not the same thing as a do-nothing option. And the reason for that is especially because you've got in item 3, demand management measures, and you've also got in item 7, accommodate other modes. And given the long discussion that we went through about the mobility master plan, the hole in this report is that it fails to take into account and at least identify as an option. And I'm not saying we pass that option now, but we at least identify it as an option, that there be a option 3, no widening option, noting that item 5 and item 7 could be incorporated into that. And I guess my question specific is, if item 3, incorporate travel demand management measures, is done well, coupled with item 7, accommodate other modes, is done well, isn't a no widening option at least worthy of study as one of the options in an EA?
Mr. McRae?
Certainly, all 7 of those planning alternatives are worthy and considered through the process. And the recommendations coming out of it were based on a combination of technical analysis and public consultation, and also the recommendations of the previous transportation master plan, the Smart Moves Transportation Master Plan. The climate lens direction to further consider this project, like the corridor widening of Adelaide Street under the MMP, is another chance to consider, I think, what you're getting at. But through the process that was undertaken, the recommendation was the combination of planning solutions 3, 5, 6, and 7.
Thank you. That's very helpful. So through the chair, in addition to a no widening option, I think the other matter that I think is deficient, and why I would not be willing to support this at this time, is if we are just going to go with, here's one widening option, here's a second widening option, here's a third widening option, we're going to have widening, I would at least like to see, and I think it would be appropriate to include at the stage of an environmental assessment report, what some of the mitigation measures would be downstream. Because we know from the learning that we have accumulated on induced demand that this is going to increase traffic. That shouldn't come as a surprise. The point of the widening is to increase traffic. And we already know through a variety of studies that we've done already that Adelaide North, and we can go down Adelaide North past Fanshawe Park Road, we can go down over the river, we can come down past Huron, we can go down to Oxford, we can go pretty far down. There are going to be negative environmental effects from a road widening option. So I think at the very least, in addition to including the no road widening option, which isn't to say that that's what you adopt, but it's in the consultant's report. I don't know how long it would take for the consultant to fix that. I imagine not very long. That there will also be some mitigation measures identified. So I'm going to take the position, and I'm going to move that the Adelaide Street North Environmental Assessment Study be referred back to include a no widening option, and that number 2, that it also include discussion of downstream mitigation measures. And I don't know if downstream is the right word to use, but I'm thinking of what happens to the traffic in between Fanshawe Park Road and, say, for example, Oxford. So I'm using the word downstream. So those are my two amendments.
Okay, thank you. So you're looking to move those amendments. We haven't moved and seconded the initial motion. So are you looking at moving that separately? I think we should deal with the recommendation first, and then look to amend it if there were any, if you had a seconder to do so.
Well, so procedurally, if we do it that way and the main motion passes, then Do my amendments become moot, or can they be added on?
Before you do the main.
Okay, thank you. So the clerk is saying that that's a motion and not an amendment, so we would need a seconder for your motion. Is there a seconder? Councillor McAllister, are you seconding? Okay. Do you need the language or you? We're just getting the language prepared. Councillor Van Meerbergen, did you have your hand up as well?
Yeah, I was just going to speak to the amendment.
Go ahead. You want to speak to the motion? Go ahead.
So I'm prepared to support the staff recommendation, but not this amendment. This idea that we always have to take the position that we can't widen any roads in London is just pie in the sky thinking. The people of London are demanding it. Each and every day that they're driving around, they want some relief. And then we just come up with ways to constrict ourselves. We just heard a few minutes ago an argument that, oh, well, you just want people stuck in traffic jams? Well, if that's how to do it, you don't widen the road and everybody's stuck in a traffic jam. So let's get realistic and get into reality here. Widenings are needed. They're needed all over the city.
Thank you. Okay, I know I had a bit of a speakers list going, so I'll go to Acting Mayor Lewis, and then I will go to Councillor Pribble, and anyone else, let me know if you want to be on the speakers list.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, I'm going to keep my preliminary comments brief. I won't be supporting the motion to change the EA, and through you, I would like to ask Ms. Scher if she could explain what happens in terms of our timelines on projects when we start amending EAs that are ready to be filed with the clerk and put on the notice for the public for the review period.
Thank you, Ms. Scher.
Madam Chair, I can certainly start, and then Mr. McCray may have some information to add. Amending an EA does require that we meet certain processes with respect to consultation. There is some urgency from a staff perspective to advance this work with respect to the intersection of Sunningdale and Adelaide. With respect to the ultimate corridor widening that is included in the rest of the report, approving this EA and it going through the provincial approval process does not tie our hands or require us to do so. It gives us the ability to do so in the future should we so choose. Our intent as staff is to continue with the active project at Sunningdale and Adelaide should this pass as submitted. And then the decision around the ultimate corridor widening would be reflected in the mobility master plan as part of the larger strategy around where we would want to do strategic congestion relief and where we would want to employ other measures to help people move around safely by all modes.
Follow up?
No, I will just say thank you. I think that makes it very clear. We are not committing to a widening, but we are leaving the door open because there may be future need for that. And we are also putting timelines for an existing project at risk if we start amending the EA now and going back through those processes.
Thank you. I have Councillor Pribble next.
Thank you, and comment to the fellow councillors. I do hope that the motion that's currently on is going to be defeated, and we will go with the recommendation of the staff. I'll go further. I agree with everything what the acting mayor just said, and I will add on to it. I really think if I look at the distance on Adelaide between Fanshawe and Sunningdale and going down south of Fanshawe is 4 lanes. So this one is currently 1 and 1. And if I look at the growth projections, what we have on the northwest corner of Sunningdale, I really think in terms of this distance, it's a very good proposal. It makes sense going into the future, Sunningdale as well. And I don't want to miss this opportunity. And there are even, if I look at the Adelaide heading northbound, there are 2 lanes, and already currently there are dangerous situation right now because of the cars trying to pull into the left lane. And I do think that, I actually think that this is a great vision in terms of going 4 lanes, and the bike lanes that are proposed, and also north of Sunningdale. It's a perfect transportation master plan. And the only thing is that I would ask when we go further to make sure when we are widening to 4 lanes that the sewer capacity, if you look at that, and also the curbed island in the middle, I just hope that when we go and widen to 4 lanes, that there won't be any planters and anything high to grow. But I really thank you to the staff for this proposal, and I hope current motion is defeated and the committee is going to vote for the original recommendation of the staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cuddy.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, I'll be supporting the staff recommendation and voting against the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors, visiting councillors looking to weigh in on this before I call the vote? Councillor Tressa.
Yes, in summary then, I think we have to distinguish between legislating a result and leaving options open in an environmental assessment. And in terms of the amount of time it takes, we just did a change, a substantial change to an environmental assessment, and it came back at it came back by the council meeting. It didn't even take that long. So I really don't think it would, I don't really think it would necessarily add to the, to the timeline for the intersection. And furthermore, if we're going to pass this, basically what we're doing is we're passing an environmental assessment that's being filed with the province that on its face, does not include a no widening option. So I hear what you're saying about that doesn't preclude us from not widening, but why wouldn't we include that even superficially as an option? So at the very least, I think that if we're going to vote down my amendment, which seems that's the direction this is going, there should at least be some language in there making it very clear that this does not preclude council from adopting a no widening option. I am not trying to hold up the intersection, but I am trying to protect the people who use Adelaide all the way down, who have reported just terrible conditions. And you know what they say, you're just not sitting in the traffic, you are the traffic. And we're just going to create more traffic. So I think this assessment needs to leave that option open. And if that gets voted down, I think there at least needs to be some language in adopting this that says this does not preclude council. Because the way I read this environmental assessment, those are the 3 options you're adopting. So I want to see some additional assurance language in there.
Thank you. Does staff want to provide any additional comment?
As a suggestion to committee, if it acknowledges the concern, possible amendments to the staff recommendation could be the addition of a 4th clause, and it being noted that the corridor widening of Adelaide Street North is subject to the outcome of the mobility master plan and future development charge background study.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a current motion on the floor right now to deal with first. So I will look to the mover and seconder of that to any further comment before we call the vote on that.
Thank you. I would like to have the vote on my motion, and if it's unsuccessful, then I'll come back with that other amendment. But I do feel that as a matter of what an environmental assessment should include, this is deficient and it should be fixed. So I stand on my motion, and I'll reserve coming back with some other language afterwards.
Thank you. And if the committee will allow me to speak from the chair, just to when I was reading through this, I think the context as provided on page 55 is really essential to how we understand this EA. And I mean, for me, when I was looking at it, this was not a matter of an egregious road widening. This was making for more of a complete street design in my mind as it relates to the completion of Adelaide. Being somebody that uses this roadway, I can tell you I do see opportunities for conflict with pedestrians as well as cyclists in this corridor right now, and so I do see the need for this type of mitigation. And then I look at the growth in the area, and again, as Councillor Pribble has mentioned, I mean, there's substantial growth happening up at the Sunningdale and Adelaide corner, including, big apartment buildings and condominiums, as well as many single-family homes that have been added in that corridor. So I understand that there is this desire from other councillors to not widen the intersections and in our roadways. However, I do, in this case, see this as a minimal widening and also connecting into the Sunningdale road widening. We have, as a council, previous council, committed to a lot of growth on the outer periphery of our city right now and still within the growth boundary. And we have to help address the traffic that has been created by these developments in this area. And I know many people that use this corridor to get into the northwest part of the city as well, and it is a traffic nightmare on a good day. So I welcome this study. I welcome the opportunity to see this completed, and thank the staff for bringing this forward. So I will not be supporting the motion that's on the floor. Okay, seeing no further speakers, I will call the vote on that item. That is not an amendment, it's a separate motion that the Adelaide Street North Improvements Environmental Study report the administration to include a no widening option as well as a discussion for downstream mitigation options.
Closing the vote, the motion fails 1 to 5.
Okay, thank you. So committee, we still have the main motion to deal with. That was the recommendation that was provided in the package. I'm looking for a mover and seconder on the recommendation. I have Councillor Cuddy and Acting Mayor Lewis. And Councillor Chaucer, go ahead.
I'd like to amend that motion to include the, what they said before. Could you repeat that so the clerk has it nicely? About how this does not this does not mandate the widening. It does not preclude the council from considering this, or something about the mobility master plan. You said it well.
Mr. McCrae.
Thank you. Yeah, my suggestion was a fourth clause, it being noted that a corridor widening of Adelaide Street North is subject to the recommendations of the Mobility Master Plan and future development charges bylaws.
Okay, so I have that as a amendment. I'm looking for a seconder. Okay, Councillor McAllister seconded that, and Councillor Pribble, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair, to the staff. We just talked about the mobility master plan throughout the next year, and we are talking about 2024. Would this mean that we are going to wait first based on this motion? Are we going to wait till the master plan is completed and then we would revisit this? Because we would be looking for another 1.5 years of delay in this project.
Mr. McCrae.
Yeah, the intersection improvements at Sunningdale Road are active. Approval of this environmental assessment enables this environmental assessment to inform the design of the intersection for the Sunningdale Road project. The Adelaide corridor, that is I think it's currently scheduled 2029. So there would, waiting for the outcome of the mobility master plan and development charges bylaw should have minimal effect on that project, given that it is a later phase.
Counselor, follow-up?
No follow-up, thank you.
Counselor Van Meerbergen, did you have your hand up?
I was adjusting my toupee, but I think I will speak. I don't support this amendment. And I'll just leave it at that. So I'll be voting against the amendment.
Okay, thank you. So we have any other speakers to the amendment? Okay, so we will open the amendment first, and then we'll look to deal with the main motion.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 4-2.
Okay, thank you. So now we are dealing with the main motion, and that's in front of you. Any further discussion from the committee? Okay, Councillor Chaucer.
In light of what I think is a very reasonable compromise through the chair, which I thank the staff for, I'm going to be supporting this motion.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments from councillors, visiting councillors? Okay, seeing none, we'll open that for vote. We just have to add the amendment.
I'm logged out of eScribe, so I'm just going to verbally vote yes.
Thank you. We're just adding the amendment.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. Okay, so that takes care of our items for direction. We're now moving back to the communication from Councillor Frank. That was on our added 4.4, the Climate Emergency Action Plan phase out of gas.
Madam Chair, I'm just going to advise committee members that I am now late for a pre-meeting before CAPS. So I am going to have to, that's hence my logging out of eScribe, and I will be leaving the meeting. And for those of you joining CAPS at 4 p.m., I'll see you then.
Thank you. Okay, so I would like to, Councillor Chaucer, you have your hand up, go ahead.
Even though I should defer to Councillor Frank because it's her motion, I just want to put it on the floor.
Okay, so so there is communication from Councillor Frank. It included a motion with it, and Councillor Tressa is looking to move that motion. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor McAllister? Okay, thank you for putting that forward so that we can have some discussion. Would either of you like to speak to it before I go to Councillor Frank? Oh, and then I'll go to Councillor Van Meerbergen after the mover and the seconder if they'd like to speak to it, and then I'll go to Councillor Frank. Okay, I'll go to Councillor Van Meerbergen and then back over to you, Councillor Frank.
No, that's fine. I'll defer to Councillor Frank and I'll speak after.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Go ahead, Councillor, and thank you for putting this letter forward to committee.
Thank you, and thank you very much for making some time for this. I really appreciate it, because it is somewhat time sensitive, and I didn't include that in the letter, but I am hoping to see direction, and hopefully this passes and goes to council next week. So if we're able to, we are able to engage in some delegations at AMO. That being said, I just wanted to provide a really quick overview of why I'm submitting this letter. So essentially, for those who aren't familiar, the federal government is coming out with clean electricity regulations regulations, helping provinces and territories across Canada make sure that we're on track to meeting federal targets. Of course, London has our own targets of net zero by 2050. And as we saw in our climate emergency action plan update in May, despite us reducing our fossil fuel use, our energy use is still going up, and as such, our electricity, when it goes up, with the further carbonization of our electricity grid, our emission profile goes up. So as I mentioned before, we already currently use gas to power electrical grid. There's about 7% natural gas in the grid at any given time, although that has been steadily increasing under this current provincial government. So this letter is advocating towards the provincial government to try and phase out fossil fuel use in our electricity grid in the same way that we phased out coal use in our electricity grid. That was a huge success for the health of Ontarians. There used to be smog days. When I was little, I can't recall the last time we've had a smog day. So that was really successful. This is the next step. So with our electricity grid, we want to be moving towards renewables, hydroelectric. I'm fine with nuclear, but essentially this is a letter advocating to try and get to net zero carbon by 2035, which is consistent with the federal targets. So that's part A, and that's having the mayor submit a letter, and I've already spoke with Mayor Morgan, and he would be okay with that if this passed through council. And then part B and C are more directly linked to our emergency action plan, and that is directing staff to work with those in London who are using fossil fuels to provide electricity at their facilities, and engaging Enbridge and London Hydro to talk more about how they're going to be on track to be meeting our climate emergency action plan targets, which both those items are in the climate emergency action plan, but this kind of pulls them front and center and makes sure they're being dealt with in a timely manner. And that is the main couple points. I'm happy to answer any questions. But as you can see from the submission, there are a lot of good reasons why we should be doing this work and doing the advocacy. And I find it actually very similar to the work we're doing with homelessness, where we are, taking our stance in London and trying to encourage the province to meet the needs of our community. And really, again, we're trying to meet the needs of Londoners. So happy to answer any questions, though, and I appreciate the mover and seconder.
Thank you. Councillor Van Meerbergen.
Thank you, Chair. We are very, very fortunate to be in the province of Ontario with our ability to generate such low CO2 emissions on such a wide plane, servicing the millions of Ontarians, residential and industry included, where we come to the point where it's about 93% CO2 free with the current mix that we have. Now, because of the increasing demand, there's going to be a time where we may have to increase with natural gas until such time as the additional nuclear capability is online. Coupled with the nuclear capability are some renewables like wind and solar to help with peak demand. I think the province has done a very responsible job in terms of how they're moving forward with this nuclear, which of course is key, along with gas at the moment, to keeping our base loads capable and have the capacity. That is so key. The last thing we want in our province is to start having brownouts because we start relying on renewables such as wind and solar to be in part of our base load or our continuous electricity supply. That's what we don't want to signal to potential investors or potential industry that's looking at London to come to London that we want to have an unstable mix. That's the last thing we want. Gas is far cleaner than coal. At the current levels that we're talking about, and even the projection for the interim, until we get the CO2 cleaner nuclear online and able, that's a reasonable step. I will not support Certainly just coming onto the floor like this without any kind of staff review or staff commentary on this. So I will move a motion to refer back to civic administration, because I think this is worthy of commentary. It's all and good to have an individual counselor send this in. Job, because somehow it has to be annual. Well, I'd like to see it reviewed, and I'd like to see commentary from staff on this. So I'm moving the referral, and I believe the referral takes precedent over my motions.
Thank you. Okay, so I have a motion to refer and a seconder in Councillor Cuddy. But I kind of heard a question in there, which was, has staff provided any input into this? So you may want to ask that question to staff as well, Councillor Van.
I'd like a written response, and I think that the rest of us on council deserve it as well. This is a big issue. We are not the provincial government. This is out of our lane in many aspects, but I do want to hear back from the appropriate areas of civic administration.
Thank you. So we have a referral on the floor right now, and as you know, as Councillor Van Meerbergen stated, the referral takes precedence. I'll go back to Councillor Frank as she had her hand up, and then I'll look for other speakers on the referral.
Thank you. Yes, I'd actually like to pull Councillor Van Meerbergen's question and ask staff if they've had a chance to review this and what comments they've added. Thanks.
Thank you to Mr. Stanford.
Thank you, and through the chair. When I look at on page 2 of the package, I'm not sure on your agenda, possibly 188 at one time. It refers to 3 bullets. Regarding the last 2 bullets, both those items are very much in keeping with the Climate Emergency Action Plan. The large generators in London, we actually receive information annually from them right now. So obtaining further information, that is a doable item. The third bullet, which is ongoing dialogue with Enbridge and London Hydro, we actually have established relationships on the Climate Emergency Action Plan right now, and furthering those discussions on an item such as this, very easy to do. I think the key part in all of this is that this has actually been an ongoing discussion. It's been driven by the federal government, and the federal government has made a commitment to be dealing directly with the provinces. So the heavy lifting actually doesn't really involve city staff that much. We're just following the progress of what's occurring at the provincial and federal government levels. There are definitely differences of opinion across Canada on this, but the federal government has proposed legislation and regulations associated with a clean electricity regulation for Canada-wide use by 2035. So on the first bullet, subject to committee and council, and of course the mayor, there's nothing there that we would actually disagree with at this point in time, because it is just furthering the dialogue on an important subject matter. And what we've read to date, the items that have been raised by Councillor Van Meerbergen are the same items that are being discussed with the federal government and the provincial governments across Canada.
Councillor?
Thank you, yes. And just to reiterate, I did send this letter about a month ago to staff for their review, and they've added some items to it that strengthened a lot of the work that they're already doing. I did want to also just add, let me just pull this up. In more general terms, I just wanted to highlight the cost of doing nothing is significant. And again, I hear from folks that this is the responsibility of the provincial government. At the same time, London is only really able to plug into the provincial energy grid. And since essentially they are the provider of that, we have a duty and an ability to ask for them to change the composition of the energy grid. And that's what we're doing if this is approved. And I think, we were talking a little bit earlier before about if we do nothing, we'll see gridlock in London from a traffic perspective. But I also want to highlight, and it's kind of topical, I don't know if you guys have noticed in the last month, but there's been lots of days where people have had to stay inside because it's too hot, it's been raining, thunderstorms, we've had air quality advisory issues. As we move forward, there's research that shows more and more we're going to be experiencing these extreme weather events. And just coming up on my page, it started to show me actually by 2071, if we do nothing and we rely on a fossil fuel-based economy, we're going to be spending at least 90 days inside because we're going to see temperatures of over 35 degrees Celsius. Plus, when you layer in the humidex, most people aren't able to go outside at that point. So if we're doing nothing, we're going to be looking at summers where people spend 3 to 4 months of summer inside in air conditioning. And that means people are going to be running their electricity to ensure they have air conditioning. So, the cost of doing nothing is way too much at this point. I'm probably still going to be here by 2071. I'll be 80, but I'm still going to be here. And I don't want to have to spend 3 months of the year inside in the summer when I want to go outside in air conditioning because we did absolutely nothing at this point to change that. And that's not even including winter. I'm just talking about during the summer. So I just would urge people to think to the future, to 2050, to 2070. If we do nothing with our fossil fuel use, we're going to be handing a big problem to future generations. And again, this is just one of many ways that we're trying to improve the lives of Londoners now and in the future. So again, thanks to this committee for the consideration.
Councillor Van Meerbergen.
Yeah, I just need to respond. I mean, nobody's saying do nothing. What we're saying is we have a situation in Ontario which is actually it's envied around the world in terms of its low CO2 content. The fact that we're looking at new nuclear, which has no CO2, is obviously a fact that we're taking steps in the direction of lower CO2. So far from doing nothing, the province is doing a lot. And again, when I tell, for example, the company that I'm with, our largest customer is European based, when I tell them that we have a 93% CO2-free content in our electricity, they're amazed. Germany made the huge mistake of decoupling from nuclear, and now to keep things moving, and they can't access gas because of the Ukrainian situation, they're burning coal. So they are through the roof on CO2 emissions. So thank God we're in Ontario. We're in a good place. The province is responsibly moving ahead. There's gas in the component. Yes, that's a fact. It's very minimal. And for comments like this, that we're going to do nothing and we're going to wake up as old people and can't breathe. Let's talk to China. They're the world's largest emitter and growing. They're double what the United States puts out. They've got plans for more and more and more coal-fired electricity generation units. Now, that all moves around the world, including London. So that affects London's air. So the little bit of natural gas that we're burning in Ontario is not the problem. I won't be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, Councillor Frank, you said you had a tiny comment. Go ahead.
Just one last tiny comment. 7% is the historical amount that we've had of natural gas that's in our grid. It's going up because this current provincial government is investing more money in the natural gas factories. Currently, you can Google search this, Ontario electrical grid current use. We're using 27% gas right now in this very moment in our electricity grid. So 27% of the lights right now are being powered by gas in this room. So I just wanted to highlight that we're going up in our usage if we continue on this path that the provincial government has decided for us. And as well, maybe a future meeting, I'd be happy to have the mayor write a letter to China about reducing their use of fossil fuels as well, because I hear Councillor Van Meerbergen, everyone needs to be doing their fair share. So if that is an advocacy tool that we're looking at from this council, that is something I would happily work on with Councillor Van Meerbergen.
Thank you. Any other members of committee that would like to speak to the motion? Okay, Councillor Van Meerbergen, go ahead.
I have to also state for the record, I mean, the stat that we hear in terms of Canada as an entire nation, our contribution to CO2 worldwide is around 1.6%, 1.6%. And of that, a good chunk is from the Alberta tar sands. So then we go into the minutiae of London, Ontario, which is what, maybe less than 1% of the Canadian population. And then we look at, you know, we can't widen Wonderland Road because of climate change. We can't use gas to provide electricity to Ontarians because of climate change. It doesn't mean a hill of beans in terms of the climate change situation. And it's just a simple fact. When you've got these huge emitters that are pumping out billions and billions of CO2, and then we start with our micro focusing, and then we try to tell the province what to do as a municipality, because they're going to have to use some gas until the nuclear is ready. Well, what are we supposed to do? Are we going to just rely on the whims of the wind and the sunlight and risk brownouts? We need something substantial to provide industry and residents with the continuous power that they require. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Frank, and then I also have some questions. Go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry for this continued back and forth, but I feel like if we're stating various opinions, I just wanted to make sure that this was on record as well. Canada has some of the worst emissions per capita. We have, based on, this is on 2021, on average in Canada, an individual per capita will be using about 14.2 tons of CO2 a year. In China, an individual will be using about 5 tons of CO2 per year. So per capita, actually, Canada is doing terrible and as a significant emission profile. A lot of that is due to transportation. In fact, over half of that per capita is due to transportation, so personal vehicle use. So yes, we are population-wise smaller. Per capita, we're using significantly more resources than other countries, including China. So I think that it is everyone's responsibility. Each municipality, each province, each country needs to be working on reducing their emissions, and we have control over London's profile, and that is, again, why we are here to discuss this issue. Thanks.
Thank you. And I just want to steer this conversation back to where we are, which is the referral. Okay, so that's what we're dealing with right now. I feel like you're arguing more of the previous motion than the referral right now. So I'm going to steer us back to the referral. Before I go to you, Councillor Van Meerbergen, I just wanted to comment on this and tell you where my thinking is on this. So I heard from Mr. Stanford on items 2 and 3, bullets 2 and 3 in this motion, of which I'm supportive of getting more information from our community partners and to find out more about our other facilities in town that are also using gas in their operations. So definitely I see those 2 as valid. Where and I see number 1 as valid as well, I should say. But I do feel like I need more information because I have a series of questions, and we're at 3:39 and we have another committee starting at 4. So my questions, one, and I could get into some of them, but the first being, my understanding is when we look at renewables right now in Ontario, we have to back up those renewables with another generation source in theory. So if we were to all of a sudden make a decision to add more renewable, let's say more wind to our grid or to our system, at that point, would we then have to increase the generation of electricity to within another form in our grid because of reliability issues as well as what the requirement is right now?
If I may, Madam Chair, we're getting into an area that is almost beyond what I have access to at this point in time. It's a very good question. What the federal government is doing with the provincial counterparts is making sure that Canada can function exactly as is today, but puts in place the necessary changes they've announced a timeframe of 2035 to work towards. What I see before you today is encouragement to find out what is the plan for the provincial government. The provincial government has indicated that it has to work closely with the Independent Electricity Group, IESO, and a plan has been produced, but the plan doesn't necessarily meet the terms and conditions of the federal regulation. So the challenge that could occur is infrastructure could be built in the next 5 to 10 years that is not compliant in 2035. So this is why all parties have to be together and working on what the infrastructure looks like as we look at more renewables, as we look at more nuclear, as we look at more hydro on a Canada-wide basis. So as I see something like this moving forward, our folks with London Hydro have expertise. Enbridge, a local tax-paying business, has expertise. All that expertise is required, but we do have a date of 2035. So when we start announcing that things need to change by then, it suggests to me and the staff I work with here, we've got 12 years to continue to work with these partners on major concerns at the local government level, but much of this does rely on provincial and federal government working hand in hand on infrastructure solutions to make sure our economy stays strong. It is difficult for us at this level of government to get in the specifics because we just don't have access to those technologies and knowledge.
Thank you. And I appreciate that honest and candid response to that question. And I think that is my reason for wanting to support a referral. I do feel like we need more information, and we do have the ability to get that information from some of our partners as well. I think that they can add to this discussion. For instance, if a way to look at moving forward with more renewables is also to look at battery opportunities for more battery storage, for instance, although it is expensive, if that is more of an option to back up some of our energy as well. I mean, that's something we have to consider and something we have to have more conversation with, as far as I'm concerned, as a council in the future as well. I do also think that, we're talking about gas-free, but I do think there's more of a conversation to be had about how do we use gas appropriately and judiciously as we continue to move toward more renewables. And I understand the desire to move there for 2035. I understand where the federal target is, but we are kind of caught between the federal government and the province on this. And I would appreciate having government relations weigh in on this as well. As to our path as we advocate for change. How do we do that within the parameters of our government relations portfolio? To me, if we're meeting with the Minister of Energy and we've got a letter from the mayor that's directing this approach, I would expect that, we've given our government relations folks enough tools to address these concerns as well and how we get there. And considering we don't even have the information on how much, I know there's an estimate of 3 to 11% of the cogeneration facility emissions that are there as well. I do think that there's just too many unknowns right now for me, and I'd like more information before I make a decision. I'm happy to split pieces of this as well, but I think just with the timing, with 15 minutes left before the next committee starts as well, I think I'd support a referral at this point to allow for more opportunity for discussion and more information. Councillor Van Meerberg, and you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I think that's an excellent idea to bring the government relations people in on this as well from the city. And then through them, the appropriate areas of the provincial government, such as the Ministry of Energy, the IESO, et cetera, could also give us feedback and more information about what their plan is and why they're doing it. And I think, yeah, the more information, the better. And then I just want to quickly, I'm just going to finish, quickly comment on the per capita statement. I mean, it's just simple math. When you've got 40 million in a large northern country with what, 5 time zones, as opposed to a country like China with 1.3 billion, when you take your aggregate numbers and divide by 1.3 billion, there's a really good possibility it's going to be less than when you take the aggregates in Canada and divide by 40 million. So, you got to be careful when you start throwing out stats like per capita when you're dealing in a situation like this. So anyway, thank you again, Chair.
Thank you. And I'm just asking the clerk if it's possible to split a referral. Because for me, again, it's the first part, the first bullet where the mayor's being asked to write the letter that I personally would like to have more information. The other two pieces, which are asking for us to collect information and bring back a report, I have no issue with. So it's just the first clause that I'd like more information. Okay, so I'm looking to split the referral, and with no further speakers and our time winding down, I'm looking to open this to vote. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to split the referral for Part A. Okay, so to split the referral for Part A, do I have a seconder to split that? Okay, so I guess we're not splitting it that way then. Okay, so we'll deal with all of the referral then. So it's open in front of you that the communication included on the added agenda from Councillor S. Frank related to the Climate Emergency Action Plan phase out gas be referred to Civic Administration for review. And that's open.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 3-2.
Okay, thank you. So that deals with the final item on our agenda. And with that, I'll look for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Cuddy, Councillor McAllister, by a show of hands. And thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time. Thank you to staff for the very long meeting.